For a Senate panel this morning, she's being asked about why she's demanding a 15% cut to her agency's budget. McMahon insists that's to slash the bloat in the agency.
Our budget reflects this vision. Its cuts reflect a bureaucracy that is getting out of the way, and its continuations and increases represent smart spending that will help improve student achievement and not serve bureaucratic interests.
McMahon is calling for some K-12 programs to be consolidated, including efforts to aid rural schools and another program that helps students who are homeless. The Trump administration is also demanding cuts to the federal work-study program that's at the college level. Indiana Governor Mike Braun has fired the 3 trustees of Indiana University who were elected by alumni. He has replaced them with his own 3 picks. It's the latest effort from a Republican governor to address what they see as issues in public higher education. From member station WFIU, Ethan Sandweiss reports the governor only got the power to remove the trustees in April.
Last-minute changes to the state budget allow the governor to remove the 3 elected trustees, although Braun previously told reporters he wasn't considering it. The governor notified them they were terminated in a 1-sentence letter. The new trustees include conservative attorney James Bopp Jr., who represented Citizens United in a court case that opened the door for corporate political spending. Bopp has also challenged the results of the 2020 presidential election. Governor Mike Braun also appointed former ESPN anchor Sage Steele, who was suspended from the network in 2021 after comments against COVID vaccine mandates and about former President Barack Obama's racial identity. For NPR News, I'm Ethan Sandweiss in Bloomington, Indiana.
The State Department says more white South Africans who were given refugee status by the Trump administration have now arrived in the U.S. Kate Bartlett reports the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria is continuing to interview applicants for the controversial refugee program.
The State Department confirmed, quote, refugees continue to depart South Africa on commercial flights as part of the department's successful efforts to resettle Afrikaners seeking safe haven in the United States. It did not reply to questions on how many have left since the first group of 59 arrived in the U.S. on a charter flight last month. The Associated Press quoted the Solidarity Movement, a local group representing the Afrikaner minority, as saying another 9 Afrikaners had left late last week. Trump says Afrikaners, the descendants of mainly Dutch colonists, are being persecuted in South Africa. The South African government and most experts say there is no evidence to support this. For NPR News, I'm Kate Bartlett in Johannesburg.
On Wall Street, stocks are higher. The Dow is up more than 82 points. The Nasdaq is up 142. You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Add Norton Public Schools to the growing list of school districts that are requiring high school students to ditch their cell phones while school is in session. The Norton School Committee has approved a policy to require high school students to put their cell phones in a rack or a hanging pocket holder when they enter a classroom and keep them there until class is over. The Sun Chronicle reports that the committee approved the student handbook policy revision for cell phones and similar personal electronic devices at their meeting last week. And Fedway Health's annual walk to raise money for the LGBT community initiatives took place on Sunday as activists deal with federal funding cuts that impact the community. Strides for Action replaces the former AIDS Walk Boston. Dallas Ducar with Fenway Health says they have lost over $2 million in federal funds for LGBTQ research.
And so we are looking to philanthropy, we are looking to fundraising to help, perhaps not fill that whole gap, but help us be able to continue to do the work that we have done for 50 years.
This year's event included a 5K run and walk. In sports, the Red Sox and Angels play the second of their 3-game series tonight at Fenway. 7:10 start. Forecast sunny mid-70s today, clear 60 overnight. Mostly sunny and upper 80s tomorrow. Could be our first hazy Hutton Henry day of the year. It's 71 right now. This is GBH News.
Comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Welcome to BPR on GBH and any PM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Going to be back here tomorrow and on Friday. No tickets or RSVPs needed, Jim. As the Governor, Maura Healey, is going to be with us June 25th from 11 to 12, and the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, will be with us July 9th, 11 to 12. Hi.
Can I add one more programming thing? On Friday,
Sure.
Our Live Music Friday is going to be 2 of the 3 lead singers, performers from Lights in the Piazza.
Yes.
I saw it over the weekend. These 3 leads have among the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. 2 of them who are going to join us are going to sing, and the play's great, the performers are great. That's Friday for Live Music Friday. But now on the campaign trail, Trump promised to be a dictator on day 1 only, alluding to his torrent of executive orders aiming to dramatically reshape the federal government and our country. Democrats campaigned on his anti-democratic rhetoric. Academics warned of a swing towards authoritarianism. He was elected anyway. Now, almost 6 months into it, if the immigration sweeps, canceled science funding, attacks on the press and higher ed, higher prices thanks to his on-again, off-again tariffs aren't enough to turn you off from the Trump administration, how about rank incompetence? Is that doing anything for you? Here are just a few recent examples. The current head of FEMA apparently doesn't know the United States has a hurricane season. We're in it right now.
That was the best.
The best. In case you're wondering, and it's expected to be brutal. By the way, his supporters are saying he was joking.
Yep.
But was the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth joking when he accidentally shared war plans with a journalist? Or was Kristi Noem joking when she obviously didn't know what habeas corpus was or Doge and made up cost-cutting numbers? And of course, RFK Jr., Make America Healthy Again, the report from last week, riddled with studies that did not exist. Speaking of AI, this is my favorite. Education Secretary Linda McMahon seems to think AI is pronounced A1, as in the steak sauce. We'll play you that in a minute. So the lines are open at 877-301-8970. Is the rank incompetence getting to you? Does it create even more trepidation about what's to come, or does it make you feel that as horrible as some of the policies are, they won't be able to achieve their goals because the people charged with implementing them, for the most part, have no idea what they're doing? The number's 877-301-8097. Can we play the A1 thing right away?
Sure, play the A1
It'll
thing.
put me in a really good mood. Here's the Education Secretary. Obviously, she comes from a wrestling background, which is appropriate. Linda McMahon at a conference in April talking about either artificial intelligence, I'm not sure, or steak sauce.
That there's a school system that's going to start making sure that first graders or even pre-Ks have A1 teaching, every year starting, that far down in the grades. And that's a wonderful thing. Kids are sponges. They just absorb everything. Yeah. And so wasn't all that long ago that we're going to have internet in our schools. Whoops. Now, okay, let's see A1 and how can that be helpful?
I mean,
there was a big front page story in the New York Times on Sunday about Elon Musk possibly having we know he's got family difficulties with all these children, but a drug problem, that he was doing a lot of ketamine, and which is used as
Elon Musk, you're talking about.
Elon Musk. Yeah. And that doing a lot of other drugs over the years. He's a big drug guy, doing a lot more drugs during the time he was chainsawing everything at Doge. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they focus on was this sort of brutal police force and law enforcement officers taking over this Peace Institute that was started by Ronald Reagan back in '84 to promote international peace. Mm-hmm. So they came in with all their law guys and they shut it down, and they fired people and laid off everybody, and they basically decimated this agency. Now we find out that judges ruled that was illegal. They couldn't do that. So now they go back in, and they find the place is full of rats and rodents. And the Doge guys, the 20-somethings, left a bunch of weed there, a bunch of bags of marijuana they found there, graffiti all over the place. They're going to have to pay the money. The taxpayers are going to have to pay the money to fix the building, put it back. And they did this, it turns out, for nothing. Cost all that money, cost all the trauma to the workers. They just kind of shut it down.
So does the incompetence make you feel I'm serious, more hopeful?
Yes.
Do you remember the story?
It makes me feel more hopeful because
this.
they're going to get overturned by the courts at least some of the time.
Do you remember one of our favorite stories, and I always say, I'm pretty sure it's from a Bob Woodward book, that there was a policy around South Korea that Gary Cohn, was he his economic guy?
I
can't
so.
remember. And
He
Trump,
was definitely his economic something. He
first
was,
Trump
he was
term,
a money guy.
And Trump was about to sign some directive that Cohn thought was an unmitigated disaster. Yeah. So rather than trying to talk Trump out of signing it, when it was put on Trump's desk, Trump was not in the Oval Office, Gary Cohn just removed it and was hoping that Trump would not remember that he had to sign the thing, and he didn't. And so in that case, incompetence worked. But an anonymous texter makes a very good point. Hey, those ICE guys seem pretty competent. Sadly, I would argue they're not, but they are brutal. And the end effect is exactly the same.
They're competent at arresting people, but they're doing a lot of these things unlawfully too. The problem is that even though these things get declared unlawful, they don't get fixed, which is very upsetting. But RFK, he's really something. Last week he was talking about how we should get rid of. I think it was a bad idea for children and pregnant women to get COVID vaccines, and that was a huge uproar because all during the COVID epidemic they pointed out how. Getting a vaccine if you're pregnant was going to pass immunity on to the baby. What a big deal it was, how sick you could get. Well, the CDC, thank goodness, says that if children and pregnant women want to get vaccines, they're going to get them. And we hope that their insurance will pay for that. But he was reversed on that. Ashish Jha, we've talked to him before.
Well, he's not reversed. He was contradicted. The CDC reports to him. So not reversed as such, but they are contradicting.
Well, they're contradicting him, but the insurance part gets reversed. That people, that you'll be able to, you don't have to pay, $188 or something to get a vaccine at CVS. But then I love the fact that he was talking about lead paint poisoning. Did you mention this one yet?
No.
Oh yeah, there's this big lead paint poisoning crisis out in Milwaukee. Brenda Casilius used to be the
former Boston School Committee chair.
She's a superintendent. Yeah. She's a superintendent out there too. And he was talking about how don't worry, we have a team out there. We have a team taking care of it. And they went around to all the people in the schools in Milwaukee and said, there's no team. Everybody's been fired. Nobody's here. Nobody's helping anything. That was really embarrassing for him. And now, Ashish Jha, I mentioned that we've had him on the show. He was a big COVID advisor to Biden. He has an op-ed in the Globe today saying that RFK Jr. thinks we should get rid of the studying the bird flu vaccine, even though Moderna, which gave us one of the COVID vaccines, is doing research on that and hoping to put out a bird flu vaccine, which may be useful if the bird flu spreads. But RFK Jr., doesn't like vaccines. Get rid of it.
Let's take some calls, but first, a couple of texts. One text really nailed it. An anonymous texter who says, speaking of incompetence, I'm listening to incompetence right now on the radio. Thank you for your support. And on the other hand, Dano and Dudley says, so far, Stormy Daniels remains the only Trump hire to actually be qualified for the job. Let's go to Al on the road. You're first on Boston Public Radio. Hey there, Al. Welcome.
Good morning, guys.
Hi.
I'm wondering if the incompetence will finally tip the scales against Trump. I mean, the gross brutality, the meanness, all of that never seemed to do anything. But maybe gross incompetence will finally turn the heads of some of these Republican senators and representatives that are supporting Trump. I mean, you can only hope.
Well, the tariffs might. I mean, if he continues with these tariffs, as his people said on the Sunday talk shows he was going to do, and it begins to take a worse and worse toll on the economy and people's 401ks and prices at the grocery store and all that, I think you're right, Al. I think money matters. As we know, that was one of the big issues in the election, and I think that could hurt him. I think. But I don't know. We're going to talk about John King later in this. The Democrats are not in a good place either with the American public. So
I don't know if they have to be. All they have to be is not Trump. Al, thank you for the call. I mean, the one person in the Trump hierarchy who is clearly competent and arguably the most dangerous is Steve Miller. I mean, Miller clearly is behind almost everything, but particularly the savagery of the deportation plans. Most evident, most recently, of this 18-year-old high school kid who did nothing wrong except be a wonderful young man over there in
they were
Milford.
looking for his father.
He is competent, sadly.
and I don't know if we can say how competent ICE is when it's arresting the wrong people, and it's done this on many occasions now, we know, including the people that went to El Salvador.
Let's go to David in Somerville. You're on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi, David.
Jim, Marjorie.
Hi.
Hello.
I'll try to find a quieter spot.
Okay.
Listen, Al is sadly wrong. Al on the road is sadly 100% wrong.
How so?
Well, if we continue to rag on their incompetence, that's just going to drive them further and further into their majority. I mean, gross incompetence has a majority in this country. I mean,
sadly, that is a fine point.
No, wait. You remember Adlai Stevenson?
Yes.
We're all of that age. A fussy Democrat woman came up to him and said, "Oh, Mr. Stevenson, all thinking people in America are with you." And he said, "Yes, madam, but I need a majority."
Yeah,
That was
by the
a
way,
great line.
Adlai Stevenson,
That
for
was-
those who are not of a certain age, was my mother's favorite politician. He was a Democratic senator from Illinois. That happened at the Democratic National Convention when he was nominated. He ran twice again and lost, obviously, against Dwight Eisenhower. That's one of my favorite political quotes, David. Thank you. I don't even know if it's true, but it's a beautiful one anyway. David, thank you for the call. Roger in Quincy I had forgotten this one. You forgot to mention the nominee to head Social Security who Googled the term, this is true, by the way, Social Security Commissioner, to find out what the responsibilities of the job were. The guy's name is Frank Biziano. Nano, I believe, is how you say his name. 877-301-8097. This is a serious question, by the way. I think most of his key people, Trump's key people, are not competent. Some think it makes them more dangerous because of the potential excesses. Some think, as you apparently do, and I'm not sure where I fall on this, that incompetence is a hopeful sign for those who don't like what they're trying to achieve, because it's less likely they'll figure out a way to get there. And you may be right, and I hope you. I don't
know. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but it certainly seems as though with the Doge things, I mean, we've talked about this endlessly, but Al Gore was running around with his little scalpel during the Clinton administration, cutting down the massive federal bureaucracy. I mean, he didn't cut everything out, but he cut out a lot of things. But they cut it out in ways like I've just said, shutting down this place, causing the building to go to hell in a handbasket, having to rehire everybody, and having taxpayers have to pay for it. Or they cut out 40% of AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps allowed young people, mostly young people, to go in and volunteer at these different places. They were at schools, they were doing buildings and housing projects.
They got a small stipend.
Yeah, which was saving a lot of money and allowing people to get jobs. So it's the chainsaw that Elon Musk made a joke about in one of his ketamine moments, or alleged ketamine moments.
Well, speaking of drugs, there's RFK Jr. Here he is during a Senate confirmation hearing answering a question about how HHS, which he is running now, should care for beneficiaries who are eligible for both Medicare and Medicaid. And he incorrectly states Medicaid's funding source, which is pretty basic stuff. Here he is.
I'm not exactly sure because I'm not in there. I mean, it is difficult to integrate them because Medicare is under fee-for-service. It's paid for by employer taxes. Medicaid is fully paid for by the federal government, and it's not fee-for-service.
It's fully paid for by the federal government, except when it isn't, when the states are paying it. The one accurate thing he said is, I'm not exactly sure. Let's go to Rhode Island. Christine, you're on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, how are you, Jim and Marjorie?
Never better.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just calling as a former media person and someone who is very active in politics still.
Yep.
I think the biggest problem that we have, and it's not going to change, is that the Democratic Party is not galvanizing at the level the Republicans have been doing all along. And they have planned this meticulously with the 2025 project, which was out there. We all knew about it. And what we didn't do was take it seriously enough. And no offense to media, because I was a part of it for most of my career. But You can talk all you want in the news. This is terrible. Look what just happened. Look, look, look. Where is the plan? I want to know where the plan is. I'm an American, and my country is going down the tubes. My child is having issues at school. Why? Because they're starting to ban books at a Catholic school. In some Catholic schools, they're doing this. No one is doing anything in the Democratic Party. And my question is why?
Well, yeah. I think we'll talk to John King about that. Democratic Party approval is 19% in a most recent poll, which is the lowest I've ever seen. But Christine, as a former member of the media, thank you for your call. Our job, as you know, here is not to organize an opposition. Our job is to do the best we can to inform people about what the real facts are, as opposed to the Fox News version of the facts, and we're doing the best we can. Now, this is an interesting text from somebody. Anonymous says, "Sorry, I missed the beginning of the show. I wasn't feeling so well, so I was injecting some bleach," which I hope you're feeling better. Now.
But I mean, there's a couple of things about what Christine said. Trump is obviously a very unusual candidate. The stuff he can get away with, when other people have tried to copy it, hasn't worked very well.
That's
Look
true.
at what happened to Ron DeSantis.
Mm-hmm.
I think Trump may be unique. At least I hope he's unique. And let's face it, the Democrats kept saying things weren't so bad at the border for a long time until they decided things were bad at the border. And you got to give Trump credit. The border is basically shut down right now because people don't want to.
Well, before you give them credit, the Democrats finally swallowed hard, signed on to a fairly draconian bill.
Right.
Who killed the bill? Donald Trump, because he didn't want to lose the issue in the campaign.
They think the Democrats missed how much this was upsetting people.
Yes, they did. You're right.
And I think they also, missed the bread and butter issues, the cost of living. They missed the bread and butter issues. And it isn't good to tell people, unemployment's down when you can't afford the groceries. And I think and you can't afford a place to live. John from Peabody, thank you for calling.
Hello, John.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie, how are you?
We're well, thank you.
Surprised by the incompetence. How can we be anything but? I mean, we've got a convicted felon for president. We've got a dog killer in front of Homeland Security.
Yes, that's
a
Kristi
bear
Noem.
decapitator in charge of our healthcare system. I mean, you couldn't find a cast like this if you went to central casting for these casts.
By the way, I hate to correct you. He did not decapitate the bear.
No, he found it dead.
Oh, that was the whale.
The whale he decapitated. By the way, that's been contradicted, but his own daughter, Kiki, says she was riding in the car when the blood was streaming down the side of the car when I think they were driving down from Maine. So just wanted to correct you a little bit there, John, but go ahead.
But, a WWF mother in charge of education. I mean, this is the biggest clown show that ever came down the pike. It's like, what? Do we really expect competency in this group? I mean, this is just ridiculous.
Well, John, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
Yesterday we were talking to Michael Curry. He's a big deal. The NAACP he runs the public health stuff around the League of Public
Health Centers
around the state. And he was talking about yesterday. He's a black guy, and he's saying, they were telling you, if you're me, you got to get this degree, you got to get that degree, you got to have an excellent resume, you got to do all these things, so that you can move up in the world. And obviously, that has not been true for the white men. And the couple of white women that are running things in the Trump administration, it was not, it was kind of a scam, I guess, in Michael Curry's estimation. And I think he's got a great point. Robert from Hollis, New Hampshire. Hi.
Hello, Robert.
Hello. I say we need a coup d'etat. Mm-hmm. The time has come for the Joint Chiefs to join with the Secret Service and the Capitol Police, seize the executive, and just remove this gang of clowns.
Well, how about before a coup d'etat that the American people those who say they're disgusted by all this actually do something rather than tweet about it? How about that for a starter, Robert? Wouldn't that be a better indication of where we are as a country?
Oh, that would be nice, but dream on. That's not going to happen.
Well, I don't think a coup d'etat is really in the cards either, and I think it's on us. If we complain, we should act. And, by the way, I'm going to talk a little bit later. Thanks for the call. One of the few maybe the only wonderful thing out of this horror in Milford with this 18-year-old man is the people of Milford actually stood up.
Well, the people of Somerville stood up for
Ozturk
as
you're
well.
absolutely right.
And we've had, there are these demonstrations, around the country. We don't report a lot of them. I'll give credit to Rachel Maddow. She's obsessed with demonstrations. She's always talking about people taking to the streets, and I'm hoping there is going to be another big take to the streets moment.
But can't be a one. We've discussed this for years.
It's going to be over and over.
I know. When we congratulate ourselves, regardless of what side you're on, because the right demonstrates too, the left demonstrates, the center demonstrates. One major event makes you feel really good, but it doesn't do anything. It's sort of like when Richard Nixon used to hide out in the White House when there were demonstrations on Pennsylvania Avenue. He lowered his head and he figured, if I can get through the day, I'm fine. And he was, until the Supreme Court said he had to release the tapes. In any case, we've got to take a break.
We're going to take a break. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, or BPR, on 89.7 GBH, and we're also broadcasting at 88.5 NEPM. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at YouTube.
Can we, before you go, listen, I'm this really anonymous texter. Jim, the poor little kid in Milford did do something wrong. He had an expired visa. Idiots. Well, actually, that's not true, number one. Number two, he's lived here for 12 years since he was 6 years old and beloved in his community. So, oh my God.
Okay. BPR 89.7, 88.5 NEPM. We'll be right back. Take your calls at 877-301-8970. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, the legacy of Boston Mayor Ray Flynn. A new book looks at how he challenged the status quo with a progressive agenda that fought for the common good and worked to bridge the city's racial divide. Ray Flynn and author Don Gillis join me. Plus, comedian Lane Moore's live show has something to say about Tinder and dreams of love at first swipe. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit ComcastBusiness.com. And Dean and Hamilton with Compass Real Estate in Cohasset, a sponsor of the South Shore Art Center's 70th Annual Arts Festival on the Common, June 13th through 15th. Learn more at deanandhamilton.com.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. And for those who don't know, NEPM, New England Public Media, as of yesterday, the 11 to noon hour on BPR is being broadcast by our colleagues in Western Massachusetts, and we're thrilled about it. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marjorie Egan. I got that wrong. We're live at the library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're talking about incompetence in high places in the Trump administration and whether or not it gives you hope that some of the worst of the Trump agenda in your mind will not be achieved, or if it scares you even more than you may have been scared before. The number is 877-301-897. Susan in Magnolia, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, I've called a couple of times. Great to talk with you.
You too.
Yeah, so, I think that where we're at right now, this administration has been worse than anybody could imagine, but for those who did take notice of Project 25, it was all there in the cards. But now we have to move forward. And I think talking about the Democrats missing, being tone deaf, that might have been, but we are in the thick of it now. And if we want to save this country, we better start listening to what the Democrats are saying, like Bernie Sanders, AOC, Sheridan Whitehouse. There's so many of them with positive messaging going on. And until we get to the midterms, when we can actually take control back, unless there is a coup, I don't see that we can do anything but put our efforts into getting Democrats,
well, Susan,
voted in.
Can I respectfully disagree with you? This horrible budget bill with a lot of horrible stuff packed into it is hanging by a thread in the United States Senate. And there are enough Republican senators who have criticized individual portions that if 4 of them, for example, have the courage to stand up to Donald Trump and stand for something they believe in, the worst excesses of this bill won't become law. So I think task number 1 is to get the word out about what this really means for real people, in the hopes that a handful of people, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Josh Hawley, whoever it is, decide to derail this. 2 years, year and a half till the midterms is a long way away. So let's hope we can change some policy in the meantime. Susan, thanks for the call, though.
Yeah, and it's also, too, that it's going to add so much money. What is it, 4 to 5 trillion now?
$4 trillion,
deficit.
yeah.
And the fear is that the American dollar, which has always been sacrosanct, and our bonds and all that kind of stuff, that we're going to be so in debt that we're paying, and our interest is going to be such a massive part of what our tax laws is going for, that other countries may not feel that great about investing in America the way they have.
Well, not only that, it's also going to mean that interest rates for real people and car loans and mortgages and higher education are also going to go up. So it's go up. It's going to be felt by individuals as well, you know.
Dennis in Lowell, thank you for calling.
Hi, Dennis.
Hello, good morning, people. I haven't called for a while, but the subject you're speaking to. Now, do you disagree with our some of Mr. Trump's cabinet members, like Kristi Noem?
No,
in
she
her
calls
definition
herself.
of habeas corpus.
Yeah, yeah. Not her definition. She doesn't understand what it is. It's. Do you know? You know that?
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Is that your point there? Okay, Dennis.
Well,
thank
I'm just saying. I'm just glad that I'm glad the New Hampshire senators spoke up and straightened her out.
Well, we happen to have
Maggie
that.
Hassan, yeah,
Here
that
it
was
is.
great.
Here's Hassan and Kristi Noem with Maggie Hassan from New Hampshire, as Dennis from Lowell said, asking her to explain what habeas corpus, which happens to be in the Constitution, actually is. Here it is.
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to.
Let me stop you, ma'am.
Suspend their
Habeas
right
corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President
habeas
Lincoln
corpus,
used it.
excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea.
Let me ask you something. We make mistakes and we try to correct them as soon as we do. If you had that experience in front of cameras all over the country, in front of a committee of the Senate, would you ever come out of your house again? Because I would have a real hard time doing it.
I'd be pretty embarrassed. I'd go in there with a crib sheet and a lawyer next to me to whisper in my ear everything I didn't know. That's what I would do to make sure I didn't
That'd be a long crib sheet, don't you think?
It'd be a long crib sheet. But, you know, you got to know the basic stuff about what you're in charge of, and she's in charge of a massive amount of the government. Gina Marabo wants to remind everybody that there are massive demonstrations planned for June 14th all over Massachusetts. Go to mobilize.us for a list. And she also claims the media doesn't cover these demonstrations that well. And that's true. We don't.
Well, I mean, let's face it. On June 14th is also a major thing that we're going to cover in alternative.
Trump's
birthday and his parade.
It's military parade, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. We should ask John King in a couple of minutes what the latest is on that. I assume people know that's true on his birthday, which is not only his birthday. We'll talk about that in a second. There's going to be a huge military parade thousands of people coming to Washington and maybe tens of millions of dollars. Christine and Everett, you got a minute. Take it.
All right. I think the incompetence is intentional. I think that from a Trump standpoint, he thinks it makes him look smarter to the world if everyone around him is an idiot. Which is not true. And also, it's the Magician Act. It's the look over here at the crazy stuff that's happening so that you don't pay attention to what I'm really doing, which is to suck all the data about American citizens into one database that I'm going to walk away with to get my, ridiculous plane that I'm going to walk away with, and all the other horrible stuff he's doing that we don't even know about yet.
Well, the latter part is sadly true. Christine, thank you for your thoughts. We appreciate it.
You know, a lot of people are talking about how they have been writing to their congresspeople, they have been writing to their senators to complain about what's going on. But it's tough because I think the senators in Massachusetts, the congresspeople in Massachusetts are all kind of on the same side. So it's not like
Do it
you're
anyway.
in the middle of Mississippi.
Do it anyway.
Yeah.
The more they're pressured, the more they'll speak out, the better that is. Just keep doing it.
And somebody else points out that Trump's priority criteria has always been loyalty, not competence. He doesn't want anyone to be a threat to his image, real and perceived.
What'd you see? He just got rid of his own nominee to NASA because he found out that the guy
donated to a Democrat.
Donated to Democrats, yeah.
That's right. But what's her name? I think Lori Loomer is always trying to get rid of people. And she's really a character herself.
She's really hard.
Anyway, we are out of time. Thanks for your calls and texts. After a quick break, we're going to talk to CNN's John King. We're going to talk with him about this latest anti-Semitic attack out in Colorado and Ukraine wiping out fighter jets in Russia. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and 88.5 NEPM.
In 2013, Syria's Assad regime carried out a brutal gas attack on a Damascus suburb. Civilians who survived that attack still bear the scars. We need psychological support and medical treatment, says this survivor. That story and more next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Boston Children's Museum, featuring 100 Acre Wood, a Winnie the Pooh experience. Visitors can sort honey and acorns with Pooh Bear and Piglet, bounce with Roo and Tigger, or read one of Owl's favorite books. Tickets at bostonchildrensmuseum.org. And the law firm of Davis Malm, committed to protecting your intellectual property, one idea at a time. Learn more at davismalm.com.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back here tomorrow and Friday. Governor Healy joins us for an hour to take our questions and yours on June 25th from 11 to 12. Ask the AG, 11 to 12 as well. Will be with Andrea Campbell on July 9th. We're joined now on Zoom by CNN's John King, CNN's chief national correspondent, the man behind the great reporting project All Over the Map. And speaking of All Over the Map, as I just mentioned a minute ago, we're very happy to now be broadcasting the 11 to noon hour at NEPM out in Western Massachusetts and beyond. John, welcome.
Happy Tuesday. Glad to be here, and thanks to Boston Latin School, I know what habeas corpus means, and a little bit of American history as well, constitutional history, I guess. But so be it.
I knew you would.
Yeah. Do you think she knew what it meant? Do you think she was gaslighting as some of our texters?
I don't think so.
I don't think she knew what it meant.
I don't read minds. You guys
Okay, don't read minds. Okay.
One thing I try not to do is read minds, but it's I do think, specifics aside in this case, you are seeing more and more. The Trump administration does not think it has to answer questions of the United States Congress, especially from Democrats. But every now and then, when there's I don't mean negative when I say critical. When there's a sharp question, even from a Republican, sometimes they seem to think that that's not their job. And this is one of the giant challenges the country's going through right now: the balance of the three branches of government. We focus a lot on the judiciary because the president's attacking the judiciary quite a bit, even though he's winning quite a bit. He keeps attacking anytime he loses. But this is one of the giant questions we're facing right now: the balance of power.
Can I just add one thing to this, since John is a local boy from birth? It's not just a one-party problem. It's obviously a one-party issue in Washington because it's controlled by one party. We here in Massachusetts tried to get an answer from a top legislator on who are all Democrats on a controversial decision, and the best you'll get is a written statement. But it's a trend from the last few years, John, that is really not good for democracy, transparency, or anything like it, and I know you agree. So
I think you're absolutely right. I was just reading the Globe story today. I should have bid for that Everett mayor's spokesman.
Oh my God!
That's pretty good pay.
$550
George
an hour
Regan.
to George Regan, the PR guy, to handle things over there in Everett. That's a lot.
It's these kind of stories. I know there's bigger important things to talk about.
No.
But stories that lower faith in government, lower faith in institution. And it's one of the things that Donald Trump cynically but smartly has taken advantage of, that people think they're all crooks. Therefore, they don't hold them to the standards that maybe we think about, when I didn't have all these gray hairs, maybe we had different standards.
So let's talk about what, if anything, we know about the latest out of Boulder, Colorado, where we know there was that horrible anti-Semitic Molotov cocktail attack on a bunch of people just doing a weekly march to get the hostages out of Gaza.
You see state charges, you have federal hate crime charges, and then you have a continued conversation, I think sadly, of people conflating things, in the sense that you hit it just right there, Marjorie. These are people who have a regular event, which is their right, this is the United States of America, to highlight that there are still hostages being held by Hamas long after the October 7th attack of long ago. And then the suspect, who is still a suspect, alleged to have used Molotov cocktails and other devices to attack them, and said, according to the prosecutors, they had been planning an attack on them for more than a year. You can be critical of the Israeli government's conduct, certainly. That is your right as a citizen. But these are individuals marching, voicing their First Amendment rights to have an opinion. There's also a conversation in the country about anger and Trump administration crackdown, and including in your community right up there in Boston and Cambridge, about people who speak out in favor of the Palestinians. And again, the First Amendment is one issue that belongs to everybody. It belongs to everybody, even if you fiercely disagree with what you're hearing. And then anti-Semitism, you don't need me. Just go on the internet. Look at it. There's been a horrible spike in recent years, and certainly since October 7th.
Yeah, but John, I agree with every word you said. And I shouldn't have to do this, but I'll preface what I'm about to say by saying, I don't know one person who is not appalled by what happened in Boulder or what happened in Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago. Having said that, I watched the head of the ADL, Marjorie did too, on CNN last night, Jonathan Greenblatt. And this is my characterization, obviously. His inability to acknowledge that maybe part of the reason for this obscene rise in anti-Semitic acts in this country, and again, not to defend any of this, let's be clear, may be because there's a prime minister in Israel who is hell-bent on killing Palestinians, including women and children. And the failure to be able to even say those words and acknowledge two horrible things can be going on at the same time creates a problem, I would argue, among some but not all Jewish leaders in this country.
I'm in these conversations on a daily basis.
I'm sure
a convert to Judaism.
I know that.
Myself, raised as a Catholic in Dorchester, Massachusetts, convert to Judaism. I'm in these conversations every day with my 13-year-old son, with his mom, with people in the newsroom. Jonathan has been in our newsroom sometimes for guests. Look, I understand his passion for the issue, and I understand when American Jews say, just stop. This is anti-Semitism. Let's talk about that. It's a singular issue. Let's not talk about other things. I get that completely. I also think that because of events of the moment, because of what you're talking about, it's certainly hard to get people to dial back their passions. We go to a temple. I'm not terribly observant. I'm not claiming to be overly observant, but the rabbi there has a fantastic sign that he's taken to several marches that says, Hamas out of Gaza, Netanyahu out of Israel. And I think that's a sentiment that a lot of American Jews hold.
Yeah.
Have that conversation with you, Jim, a week from now and a month from now in the wake of these attacks. I understand the reluctance to connect the two because they're saying, no, this is hate, and this is hate that has lasted for years and centuries, and let's not attach it to anything else. I get that. I get that. But I also get your point about we are in a political moment where when the passions are so inflamed, it's really hard to get people to turn down the volume.
We're talking to John King, CNN's chief national correspondent.
But one just last thing about this, I had not read every page of Project 2025. I probably should have, but I didn't. I was surprised to read about Project Esther, which is contained in Project 2025, which talks about squelching all pro-Palestinian kind of support. And that seems to be part of this, because you do hear, as Jim said, an inability from too many people not to hold two things at once, That's
I think that
part of the
I
plan.
agree with you. I agree with you that when you have people in official positions in the United States government, people who work at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House, the cradle of our democracy, saying that if you say, I want more aid to go to the Palestinians, or I believe the Palestinians should live in peace in an independent state, that does not make you anti-Semitic.
Exactly.
It does not make you anti-Semitic. Yeah. You can be pro-Palestinian. And, so I do think, look, again, in the passions of the moment after an attack, some of the things I'm trying to stay in the middle here and have adult conversations. I'm sure you'll have listeners text in that, John King's an idiot.
We never get those, John. I just want to tell you right now.
But it's okay. I think that I think we all have to sometimes, I always say don't read the comments. I think especially on issues like this, we do need to read the comments and just make sure that we're communicating in a way that we're reaching the people we're trying to reach. To say, I hear you, and I respect your right. You need to respect my right. But I think there are people who are trying to take advantage politically. I'm speaking slowly because I'm trying to choose my words carefully. And to say that anything they disagree with on this issue is somehow anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And that's not right. If you can disagree with John King, you can disagree with Jim and Marjorie, you can have your views about the Palestinians, and this is the United States of America. You should have every right, as long as you're not calling for violence, as long as you're not spewing hate, to stand up and state your views. That's what makes America great.
But Ramesa Ozturk did not have that right in Somerville, just a couple of miles from here, 2 months ago, as we saw up close. So, John, I also feel another disclaimer is necessary. Neither Marjorie nor I are foreign policy experts, but as non-experts, it seems to me what Ukraine pulled off in the last couple of days with these drones was a major moment in this another sadistic war. Do the people who do know foreign policy in your world in Washington agree with that thesis?
I think that, yes. I think that the innovative nature of the Ukrainians, and I hate to say that in the middle of a war, I wish this would end. I wish it never began. I think it's important, as I've said every time we've talked about this, to remember how it started. Putin invaded a peaceful, democratic neighbor, and you have to start there in every one of these conversations. But there's no question the Ukrainians have been innovative in their use of drones, in their use. They just blew up a bridge using underwater explosives to Crimea that the Russians used to access Crimea. There have been a number of innovations. My question now, and I don't know the answer, is a lot of these things, if we were to roll back the tape, 6 months or a year ago, were in coordination, let's just be honest, with the Biden administration, giving them intelligence and ideas on how to do things. I don't know the answer to the question. Are there people in the Trump administration still doing that, even at a time when, at least publicly, although the president now is mad at Putin and there's some talk he would walk away from efforts to have a peace negotiation. That only helps Putin, by the way, if the United States walks away from any efforts to broker a compromise. But repeatedly in this conflict, Goliath, David has done some things to Goliath using innovation and help, whether that help is coming from other NATO allies now that the Trump administration has kind of pulled back from where the Biden administration was. I don't know the answer to that question, but it's pretty shocking when the little guy lands some big punches on the big guy.
So, John, we talk about this almost every day in passing, but hopefully we'll do it not in passing with you, since you understand these kinds of numbers as well as anybody in this country. Most recent approval rating I've seen for the Democrats as a party is 19%. And by my calculation, 19% is about as low as a polling number is for anything. Anything gets 30%. Why is this? Why do even Democrats have such a low opinion of their own party, John King?
Well, I would say that in our polling, both parties have a pretty bad branding right now. And I think this is, again, part of a cyclical thing it was there anyway. This was already in the water, and then you had COVID, and then you have inflation, and then you have people believing that the government's just not doing what they want it to do for them, relevant to their lives, and that people would have a different answer to what that is, what they want from the government. You also see in our most recent polling, yes, incredibly low ratings for the political parties. The Democrats are worse off than the Republicans, but also people saying they want the government to do more. Now, some of that is Republicans who see Trump in power and say, I want the government to do some things here. But look, I was listening earlier, one of your callers was talking about, and you were having the conversation about the budget bill now, but you were saying, let's get behind Bernie Sanders, let's get behind AOC. I'm not in the advice business, but in my travels, I would say that one of the challenges for Democrats is to decide what you're for. and what you're standing for and where you're going to draw the line for fights more than the who's. Elections take care of the who's. There's a midterm election next year. There'll be a lot of primaries. New Jersey gubernatorial primary coming up, a number of races in Michigan that have different Democrats who people would consider to different degrees rising stars. The personality stuff, the who's, will be decided by voters at the ballot box when that happens. I think the bigger question for Democrats now is what? Who are we? What do we stand for? What are the issues are we going to stand up to Trump with? But I'm old enough to remember we go through these things. I bumped into one of the guys, he's old like me now, who was a kid back when Bill Clinton, and the Democratic Leadership Council was founded after Mondale lost and Dukakis lost. More centrist Democrats said we can't be so liberal. People thought that Bill Clinton had completely recreated the Democratic Party. That went away, right? And Barack Obama, because of the Iraq War, the party went back toward the left. So we go through these cycles in our history, and so what are the moments, what are the moments that create the spark that then brings the new person onto the scene, and what is the issue for that? We're not there yet. But I think that, again, this is a thing that Trump uses to his advantage. Faith in political institutions, including the parties, faith in the media as an institution, faith in banks, faith in government, way down. And I try not to be cynical. I try to be an optimist because of the path of my life. But sometimes you got to take a breath and say you can't blame them. If you look around, you can't blame them.
You can't blame them about what?
For not trusting any institution.
For not trusting any institution.
I always say the D words. Some people are disgusted. Some people are disillusioned. Some people are dismayed. Some people are detached. People act based on their own circumstances. But you meet a whole number of people who, for different reasons, have just taken a step back. They have less faith. They're less involved because they think it doesn't matter. Especially when it comes to this town, they think that people just don't understand their lives. And that's, forgive me, my dad was a jail guard. He was a union guy. When he had to retire for disability because it was too stressful, he worked with his hands as a carpenter and a plumber and all that. A Kennedy Democrat who I think at times never admitted it was a Reagan Democrat. We can't go back to that conversation. I wish we could. But so, I was just in Allentown, Pennsylvania. We talked about this last week. A lot of blue collar guys who, when I was a kid, would have been Democrats who are Trump voters. We're going through one of these cycles in our history where both parties are being repopulated. And I think the 26 midterms and then the 28 presidential election are going to have enormous consequences from a policy perspective, as you were both talking about earlier, about what's in the so-called big, beautiful bill, from a policy perspective and from a who belongs to what parties and to what degree do those bad numbers you just talked about, Jim, for the Democrats, to what degree, if at all, can either party rebuild its credibility, its trust, its connection with people.
By the way, one of our colleagues just sent us a note, and I think he's spot on. Isn't this by design by the GOP to get the public to distrust the system so they can dismantle it and undermine it? And I think it's a very astute observation.
Well, there's no question that, Trump's against the judges, he's against the prosecutors, he's against the courts, he's against the system, he's against the Congress. Yeah, there's no question. It's a strategy that has worked, by the way. And he's not he's again, nothing Trump does is new. You can go back through history and find other, conservatives or anti-government movements or less government movements. There's nothing wrong with a less government movement. We should be having these debates in America about the role of government. But nothing he does is new. But he just, as I always say, he puts it on steroids and makes it a lot louder in the social media age.
Yeah. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, The Daily, this morning, and they were talking about the Democrats being in big trouble and how, as you say, things have switched. I mean, now it's a higher educated people are the people that are voting for Democrats for the most part. And you mentioned this little Los Alamos out in New Mexico. I thought, wow, why is there such a Democratic vote there? It's because people were working there in very educated fields, and that it was maybe the fault of the Democrats that are doing better not to realize the plight of people that are trying to make it as prison guards or as plumbers or as carpenters and struggling in the blue states that Democrats run. And I complain about this all the time around here. It's so expensive around here. We've been talking about housing forever, and we're getting a little bit more housing, but it's like we don't...
Well, we did pass a $4 billion bond bill.
We did, but as I keep saying to you, when are the house, is it being built? Or we just pass the bill? We pass bills, and then there's not a follow-up. That seems to be a lot of frustration from the people that think the Democrats were the party of the working class. You don't see it anymore.
I think you're right. They don't see tangible results that are relevant to their lives. And they also don't see these politicians. I've heard this from commercial fishermen. I've heard this from people who work on the auto factory floor. I've heard this from people with small manufacturing businesses. It's like, they pass all these rules, but they don't show up and ask me a question. They don't show up and shake my hand and say, I respect what you do.
Yeah, that's a great point, too.
John, you've mentioned the midterm elections, and I know it's not, a midterm for a senator is a little bit different, but I correct me if I'm wrong, Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, is up for re-election in 2026, is she not?
She is.
And I think everybody in America has seen or heard the response to someone at a town hall a couple of days ago when she was talking about Medicaid cuts and defending them, and someone said people are going to die, and her response was, we're all going to die. And then it appears, at least to me, I know it's a matter of interpretation, when she did a follow-up the next day from some cemetery, she seemed to be doing a Trumpian act, again, as I said, to me, sort of mocking the mockery of her, in my opinion, really crass statement. I generally believe that, and Marjorie said this about a half hour ago, only Trump can be Trump. I mean, the best example was Marjorie's. Ron DeSantis has been a total failure at attempting to be Trump in Florida. But this is a Trumpian act. Does this matter to the voters of Iowa, the kind of people you talk to all the time, or no?
Iowa is one of the places I plan on spending a lot of time in the next year and a half. For just this reason. I just talked about the parties go through these cycles, right? My first campaign, as you know, was the Dukakis campaign in 1988. Michael Dukakis only won 10 states. One of them was Iowa. Iowa was the state that gave us Barack Obama, right? Yeah. That's where he beat Hillary Clinton. That some people are saying, oh my God, he's old, right? 2008 or 1988, my God, that's ancient history. In some ways, it is ancient history. But we have these cycles in American politics. There's at least one very competitive House district in Iowa. And now you have Ernst, and you had a Democratic member of the House just decide he was probably going to run anyway, but he made his announcement the day after she did that. Here's the test, right? Here's the test. Joni Ernst was not elected as a Trump person. Military background, kind of a maverick, kind of interesting. A lot of people thought of her as a future potential national politician. Republicans, I give them some grace in that they're having a hard time trying to explain Trump policies to people. And I do give her credit for doing the town halls. A lot of politicians won't do town halls nowadays. But you're right. That was more of a Trumpy, snarky answer. And the test of any politician is when you do something that see what the voters think. Number one, Iowa is a right of center state. But how far right of center? It used to be a blue state, or it used to be a purple state. I mean, so there's still a fair amount of blue in there. And like I said, between that House district, there's one very competitive House district. There's one potentially competitive House district. And if the other ones are at all competitive, that tells you there's something in the water in a midterm year, and that's what you're always looking for, right? Is this 2018 all over again? Is Trump going to get thumped again by the American voters who say, oh, never mind, and here come the Democrats? We focus more on the House because the House majority is so narrow, and the Democrats, in a normal midterm year, Trump's approval rating is down. Today, if you looked at the House, the historical bet would be the Democrats will get the House back. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but that's what history would tell you. History sometimes is of limited use in the Trump era. But that Ernst, she would still be favored in that race, but something like that, makes it, to me, a little more interesting. Worth checking in on.
John, it's great to speak
thank
with
you so much.
Thanks.
We are out of time. We've been speaking with CNN's Chief National Correspondent John King, the man behind the great reporting project All Over the Map. We are saying goodbye right now to listeners on NEPM, but so glad you joined us. Coming up on the fabulous 413 at 3 on NEPM, Monty and Khalees talk with the team behind the Franklin County Pride celebration and actor Sam Waterston. Right after the new news, we're still here in Boston with Carol Rose from the ACLU. You're listening to Boston Public Radio from the Boston Public Library.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues up ahead with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. Paris Alston hosts a weekly series that serves up Black intellect, culture, and joy from Greater Boston and beyond. Catch new episodes of GBH News Rooted, streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel and on the PBS app.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of BPR, live from the Boston Public Library. It's Carol Rose from the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts. Federal ICE leaders brag about their sweeps across Massachusetts under the guise of making our communities safer. Apparently that means locking up 18-year-old Milford High School student Marcelo Gomes. Do our state leaders, Governor Healy, Attorney General Campbell, have any recourse? And what's the Civil Liberties Union doing to stand up for the rule of law?
Then the Boston Foundation's Lee Pelton on the administration's obsession with attacking higher ed. Should the non-Harvards of the country be doing more to shoulder the burden? Plus, how nonprofits are faring halfway into 2025. Then we'll leave some room for our Two More Things segment. That's next on the second hour of BPR 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The White House is turning up the pressure on Senate Republicans to approve a massive budget bill that narrowly passed the House last month. NPR's Tamara Keith reports the legislation slashes federal spending and extends tax cuts passed during President Trump's first term in office.
There are the usual lengthy social media posts, but Trump is also picking up the phone to push for what he's calling the one big beautiful bill. A senior White House official tells NPR an all-out advocacy effort is underway to get Republican senators to support the sweeping legislation already passed by the House without making too many changes. The official, who was not authorized to speak on the record, said there's not a lot of room to maneuver because it passed so narrowly in the House. The official said to expect a succession of big names from the administration up on the Hill making the case. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
Jewish groups across the United States are speaking out about Sunday's assault on peaceful protesters marching for the release of Israeli hostages held by Hamas. NPR's Jason DeRose reports they're raising concerns about the rise in anti-Semitic attacks.
The attack on the March for Their Lives event on Sunday in Boulder, along with the killings at the Jewish Museum in D.C. last month and the arson attack on the home of the Jewish governor of Pennsylvania, have many American Jews on edge. Amy Spitalnik with the Jewish Public Affairs Council says there's a need for more than just the fortifying of synagogues and Jewish community centers.
But investment in things like hate crimes prevention grants, in building the sort of inoculation to extremism in the first place that prevents people from showing up and committing acts of violence like this one.
Spitalnik says the Boulder attack was clearly anti-Semitism, but she doesn't want to see it exploited by the Trump administration to undermine core democratic norms and the rule of law. Jason DeRose, NPR News.
International forecasters are warning of slower economic growth in the United States and around the world. NPR's Scott Horsley reports tariffs are partly to blame.
A new forecast from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development projects the U.S. economy will grow just 1.6% this year, down from 2.8% last year. The OECD says President Trump's trade war is also weighing on global growth. Economic worries have been very good for Dollar General as anxious customers go hunting for bargains at the discount retailer. Dollar General's most recent quarterly sales hit a record, topping $10 billion. The chain reported better than expected quarterly profits and raised its earnings forecast for the full year. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The family of an 8-year-old boy who was severely injured by a Boston public school bus driver who lost control of his vehicle and struck him outside a school is suing Boston's transportation contractor Transdev. The crash, which took place last December outside the Curley K-8 lower school in Jamaica Plain, was captured both on the bus's dash cam and on an exterior camera. According to the reports, the crash left the boy, who has autism, with a fractured femur. Lawsuit for gross negligence and systemic safety failures was filed today in Suffolk Superior Court. It's one of at least 15 claims against Transdev, the city's school bus contractor. And the former Star Shore building on Purchase Street in New Bedford will get a new life as a center for the arts. The nonprofit Arts and Business Council of Greater Boston has taken ownership of the 150,000 square foot building and will raise funds to renovate and reopen it. It's been closed since 2023 when the UMass Dartmouth College of Visual and Performing Arts moved out. The Standard Times reports that the building was donated to the Arts and Business Council by owner Paul Downey after he settled an outstanding tax debt with the city. It's likely the revitalized Star Store building will include artists, studios, and classrooms with retail stores on the first floor. Red Sox, Angels, Fenway tonight, 7:10, sunny mid-70s today, 73 in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive, with small business insurance for protecting a variety of business types with multiple coverage options, designed to fit business owners' needs. More about small business insurance is at progressivecommercial.com.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Thank you very much. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back here tomorrow and back here on Friday. Mayor Michelle Wu will be with us June 17th from 1 to 2, and Governor Maura Healey will be with us June 25th from 11 to 12. And one more, the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell, will be with us July 9th. Boy, we're telling that one way ahead of time.
We are.
Yes, we are. That's 11 to 12.
Because we want people to make plans.
That's
By
right.
the way,
right
in
after
case
the
you
4th
forgot,
of July.
I'm Jim Browdy and you're Marjorie Egan.
Yes,
Remember
that is correct.
Fine. We're joined at the library by Carol Rose. We know she is too. She's the Executive Director of the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts, and she joins us monthly. Carol, it's good to see you.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So, Carol Rose, the ACLU has been, a lot of the excuse that Trump people are using is this Alien Enemies Act to get rid of people here in the country, and you guys are looking into that. So what's the deal?
Okay, so like the Alien Enemies Act, it was passed more than 2 centuries ago. It's this old law that basically says that if we have declared war, if we're being invaded by a hostile country, there's a certain amount of suspension of some of the due process. But we're not being invaded. We're not at war. The Congress hasn't declared war. And nonetheless, the Trump administration is attempting to invoke this really old law and to say that they can use it to deport people out of the country without due process. And so that's why the ACLU lawyers across the country have been filing lawsuits challenging the efforts to invoke the Alien Enemies Act as a way to violate people's due process. So there's a split in the courts right now, which means that most likely it's going to go up to the U.S. Supreme Court and will be resolved there. But we're pretty confident this is just a clear abuse of power.
May I ask you another thing I was asking Jim this morning? The other thing they use all the time.
Did you just say, may I ask you? What is she doing here?
I don't know if I said that or not. But anyway, we're having a national emergency where we're not having national emergencies. So how come they can get away with declaring these national emergencies when there's not one? Is that the same kind of deal?
Yeah, no, it's the same kind of deal. And you know, just because they say it doesn't make it true,
right?
Obviously, and doesn't make it the law and doesn't make it legal. And so that's why the ACLU is going into the courts. And I have to say, we've had a lot of success. We've already filed over 120 legal actions just in the first, 5 months now of the Trump administration. And I will tell you, it's so interesting. The judges are becoming increasingly angry and incensed at this sort of just that the government lawyers are just saying stuff that isn't supported by the facts and just isn't true. And I think that's really important because while I don't think the courts alone will save us, it's going to be a requirement. We're going to need the courts, the legislatures in the states and cities and towns, and the people taking to the streets, as you all have talked about, if we're going to restore our democracy. But the courts are providing an incredibly important speed bump, and some of those speed bumps are going to become traffic bollards.
So I have to say, I'm surprised by how good the courts have been, even though I'm totally with Marjorie. Their follow-up on things like contempt and enforcing their orders is embarrassingly weak, in my opinion. But the thing, you appear to be fairly confident, and most smart lawyers like you agree this Alien Enemies Act, we haven't been invaded, we're not at war, etc. However, Supreme Court of the United States just gave the go-ahead to deporting, 500,000 Cubans, Venezuelans, Haitians, etc., under this humanitarian parole thing. I understand they're totally different laws,
right?
But a lot of people like you, I don't know if you did, thought that those 500,000 people were on fairly firm ground. By the way, they didn't enter illegally, needless to say.
Right, no, they entered legally, and they're here legally. And so what the court did is to say that we haven't resolved the case on the merits. So they didn't say it's okay. What they said is, in the meantime, while the wheels of justice grind slowly forward, in the meantime, they can be deported, which is the same thing as saying that we lose. And so, we're going to continue to push back and fight in every possible court, every possible legislature, everywhere that we can to try to protect people. But I will just say, we've already had, 1,500 people deported in May alone just from Massachusetts. And this is going to be devastating for our economy, devastating for our democracy. And I think people need to continue to take to the streets and to say, not on our watch.
One of the things, can I follow up just on that for a second? One of the things I've talked a lot about over the last month or so is we talked about incompetence of the Trump administration, their competence when it comes to instilling fear in people.
Yes.
Even if they lose court cases while they're pending, it seems to me they have caused whole communities to live in fear. So one of the things I was wondering I can imagine what fear like that does to a human. Maybe I can't imagine it. But I'm wondering, does it also cause hope? We were speaking to a woman from the UN yesterday who was on her way back into Gaza City today. She spent a lot of her recent life there working with the UN and their humanitarian work over there. And we were talking about hope and whether the Palestinians feel any hope and that sort of thing. Is fear creating a disappearance of hope in some people who are under attack to the point where maybe they're not even going to the Civil Liberties Union in some cases to represent them where they otherwise might?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Jim. And I think, hope, I've always said this, hope is a political act. And we don't act because we're hopeful. We get hope from our actions. And it's incumbent upon those of us who have the privilege of U.S. citizenship, for example, who have the privilege of living in a relatively free state like Massachusetts. It's incumbent upon us to lead the charge. We can't wait and assume that the people who are under attack are going to be able to do it by themselves, because they are legitimately fearful. So it's incumbent upon all of us to make that hope a political act, to set aside our fears, to overcome our fears, because that's what courage really is about. It's not just about, I'm not courageous when it's easy. It's about overcoming your fear. That's what true courage and, frankly, true patriotism is all about.
I'm sorry, you got it.
Just one more thing about deportations, at least for me.
I have one more after that, yeah.
Is when I thought previously to what's happened lately about people being deported, I always figured they would just be sent back to the country they came from. I didn't think they would be sent to a prison in a foreign country. So
you mean like a detention camp in places like Guantanamo and El Salvador?
Or El Salvador, or Trump was talking about Libya for a while.
Right.
But they're not just sent home to their country, they're imprisoned in other countries.
Yes.
So where does that fit with the law?
It doesn't fit with the law. And that's why, again, that's why we're challenging it. And I think what's frustrating is that the courts are set up for, it takes a long time to litigate. I mean, that's why we've been so surprised. Some of the courts are ruling in a day or two on some of these things, but historically the courts move very, very slowly. But I will tell you, I think the federal judges are now seeing what's going on, and the efforts by the Trump administration lawyers to use delay as a tactic, and he's always done that, right?
Yes.
But I think the judges are sort of waking up to that, and that's why I'm saying they're so angry. And it was so interesting in the case that we had with Rameza Ozturk, the Tufts student who was detained and who we ultimately were able to set free. But when we were in front of the court, and they said, who was her custodian at the time that the petition for to release her was filed? And the government lawyer said, I don't know, I'll check with the government. And the judge said, you are the government. Right. I mean, it's an amazing moment. And we're seeing that time and time again. And so, while again, I don't think the courts alone can save us, they certainly are doing a fabulous job right now, most of the time. And I'm worried about the Supreme Court and their shadow docket using delay as a way to not reach a decision, but also to let the bad acts continue. And that's really concerning.
One last thing about deportation. I unfortunately know the answer to the question, but I think people care. This story, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it right before 1 o'clock with Marcelo Gomes de Silva, the 18-year-old out of Milford, is snatched. The ICE has now acknowledged that they got the wrong guy. They're really after his father, but ICE goes on to say, but we got him anyway, and he's not supposed to be here. Unfortunately, the fact that they made a mistake and they got the wrong guy and he has no criminal record, unfortunately, is not a defense.
No, but the other thing I just want to make sure people understand that overstaying a visa is not a criminal act, okay? It's a civil violation. Yes. So it's not a crime, and we shouldn't treat it like a crime. On the other hand, they're being incarcerated in civil detention where they, still have due process rights, and it's terribly important that we keep that in mind. The other thing I just want to note, if it's true what some of the news reports are saying, that ICE is alleging that the father was driving 100 miles an hour in speed chase, I would just question that. Like, really? The
wasn't arrested for it.
No, the Milford police allowed that and didn't know about it, and I just don't think it's true.
Did the Globe say there was no records?
Yeah, there's no record.
It was like they claim these people have done these things.
Abrego Garcia's in MS-13.
And then you ask them, well, where's the evidence? And they never have any.
And they don't have evidence. So this is just sort of the problem when you have a government that actually is engaged in lying.
So let's talk about these pardons. The president's been kind of a pardoning spree. I was surprised he pardoned this murderous gang leader out in Chicago, but the guy can't get out of jail, thank goodness, because of a state case. But what's up with all these pardons for people that have, done massive tax fraud, done terrible things?
No, I'm
talking about pardoning Sean Combs, whose trial isn't even over yet.
Right, exactly. But and I think this is part of the dismantling of our democracy, dismantling of the rule of law. It's running the government like a mafia, if you would, right? And it's just incredible that he would go and he would pardon people who've been convicted of crimes with due process, and then at the same time try to deny due process to people who haven't committed a crime.
Well, maybe it's because he understands what being a felon is, and so maybe.
His lived experience.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It is incredible, and yet it's happening. And this is why I go back to saying these things are happening, but we cannot let our fear of this freeze us from acting. And those of us who are in a position here in Massachusetts to do something about it, we need to, and we need our elected leaders to do something about it as well. That's in the state legislature.
Are you a constitutional historian, or you? I'm serious.
I'm a huge history buff.
Okay, well, let me ask you something I don't know the answer to. We have learned from people like you and Judge Gertner that of all the powers a president has under the Constitution, the one that may be the most unlimited is the pardon power.
Right.
The only way to address someone if you don't like a pardon is you either impeach him or you vote him out of office. Other than that, they can pardon anybody they want.
Yeah.
Why did the drafters decide to give this power with no limitations when almost every other power a president has
some sort of a check?
Some check.
I don't know. Maybe it's to prevent one president from trying to use the power to go after another president, a previous president, or something like that. I don't know what it is, but it certainly has done a lot of harm, starting with Gerald Ford. Just going to say.
Well, a lot of people think that was the right decision.
No, I know.
We're talking about Nixon for whatever.
But there's a great moment, like when you think about the fact that, let's just let bygones be bygones and not go after the bad actions of previous administrations. Try that next time you're pulled over by a police officer for speeding. Just go, officer, let's look ahead. Let's not look back. Let's look ahead. It doesn't work for the average person. So if it doesn't work for the average person, why should it work for the rich and powerful?
Okay, so I eat in Quincy a lot. Because it has fabulous Asian restaurants and some others. And I have yet to see something that sounds like it's quite lovely. There's a new building going up. You have something to do with this, from what I understand, in which it's a public building, from what I understand.
That's right.
And apparently there are going to be 2 saints statues right out front.
Huge, 10 feet high.
You have a problem with that?
St. Michael the Archangel and St. Florian, the fire patron saints, apparently, of
like Florian Hall?
Firefighters and police.
Right. So
like Florian Hall, patron saint of firefighters, Jim. $850,000 they're going to cost.
Taxpayer dollars. And by the way,
huge.
So these religious statues are being proposed to go up in front of the new police public safety building. There was never any discussion about it. They were literally trying to slip it through without any discussion in the town meeting and in the conversations about it. And they're clearly religious statues.
Clearly.
And that is a violation of the separation of church and state. And of course, the reason that we have a separation of church and state isn't because we want the government to be anti-religion, but because we want the government to stay out of endorsing one religion, because then everyone else needs a right to have their own religion. So when you have the public funds being spent on building Catholic statues, that signals out to everybody else, don't come to the public safety building if you're not Catholic. Don't come here if you worship in other ways. And so the ACLU filed a lawsuit against this. It's a pretty straightforward separation of church and state case, and we actually sent a letter first and said, we really urge you not to do that. And the mayor, Koch, wrote back or said, pound sand sand.
Yeah, what's
so
up with
instead
the
we pounded sand right to the courthouse.
I mean, have you seen the picture? Have you seen the pictures of these?
Oh, yeah.
No, I haven't seen
Oh, my God. You won't believe it. It's bizarre. And they're huge, like I said. You wonder, what is up with the mayor trying to sneak this in? $850,000, not a piece of small change. It looks insane.
Well, and also one of them, so I was corrected. I referred to them incorrectly as gargoyles. Apparently, a gargoyle has to have a water spout coming out.
That's right,
So
they're not
the proper
gargoyles.
word would be a grotesque.
Look it up on your computer.
Wait a second. What is a grotesque?
A grotesque is a gargoyle without a water spout.
Is that really true?
It really is true.
This is what you're spending your time doing over at the Civil Liberties Union?
So I don't know if these actually
God.
are actually officially, from an architectural point of view, grotesques, but I think they're grotesque in terms of violating the First Amendment.
Oh, but I'm bummed. Thank you very much.
You look at these things, Jim. You should look it up right now. I mean, they're absolutely.
Yeah, one of them is standing on the neck. Of like a monster of some kind. And it's like, that's the police message, is that we want to stand on people's necks?
Yeah, especially in the 5 years out from the George Floyd murder. I mean, they're just bizarre.
Well, listen to this. Can I read from AI? Because obviously it's totally correct if it's AI, but actually they agree with you. A gargoyle is a water spout designed to channel rainwater away from a building's walls, effectively protecting it from damage. A grotesque, which I didn't even know existed, on the other hand, is a purely decorative carving with no architectural purpose. Wow.
Yeah, isn't that great? So now we know.
So what happens? Have they spent the $850,000 already?
I don't know, but they're not allowed to put them up. And I hope the good people of Quincy decide that this isn't the kind of leader that they want.
Yeah.
And I do have to say, if you go to the website, our website, aclum.org, and look up this case, the statements by the plaintiffs, we have a lot of plaintiffs who are speaking out on this. They're just so moving. And this is yet another example of ordinary people stepping forward to be a part of something larger than themselves and being willing to, put themselves forward and to challenge this in court.
Yeah.
And so I'm really proud of the people of Quincy, and I think we should remember not what their mayor has done, which is clearly unconstitutional and foolish, but really what the people of Quincy have done to challenge this. I think we should lift them up.
Has he done any other weird things in Quincy?
Not that I know of. But I don't know.
The most famous thing for Bostonians is he has stood in the way of the rebuilding of the bridge to Long Island.
Yeah.
I mean, by the way, you can either criticize him for that or love him for it.
But that doesn't seem like deranged. I mean, this almost seems.
Well, the fact that he did it secretly
with the
but that doesn't affect the Constitution. Even if he hadn't done it secretly, still unconstitutional.
No, but it might go a little bit to his knowledge that this is the wrong thing to do.
Maybe he's committed a few venial sins.
Well, you shouldn't say that. You have no idea. You have no.
We've all committed venial sins. Those aren't the big ones.
That's between him and if he has any God.
That's right.
He can have, but it shouldn't be the state.
He wants
in
Saint Michael the Archangel.
That's what Joni Ernst said, by the way, from the cemetery. She said something about.
Yes, if you're worried about your eternal life, why don't you embrace my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ? Because as we all know, Jesus Christ was in favor of crushing the poor and every opportunity he got.
So you also have another local thing going, which around public health stuff and public safety things with some people from Harvard Medical School. And this is the kind of thing that goes under the radar, but after having read it, it's really, really important. Explain to people what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a case that I'm really excited to say, just 2 days after we argued it, the judge issued a ruling in our favor. So that's rare and wonderful, and it sort of shows how the judges are moving quickly when they understand things. So this is a case about a patient safety net, PSNet, which is a website that the government put up decades ago, and it's a place for doctors to take their peer-reviewed articles and to put up and say, here's something that we've learned that could make people more safe. Here's some mistakes that were made that could make people more safe. And after the Trump administration came in, they issued an executive order, which then the government put into effect and basically said, you can't have any article that mentions LGBT or transgender. And so the two doctors who are lead plaintiffs, so dozens and dozens of articles were threatened with censorship unless they removed the acronym LGBTQ or the word transgender. So one of the doctors, Celeste Royce, had an article about endometriosis, which is like a disease of the uterine lining, and mentioned in passing that if a male presenting patient comes in with abdominal pain, make sure you check because it's possible for a transgender person to have endometriosis. endometriosis. And then the other doctor, Gordon Schiff, wrote an article about teenage suicide ideation and mentioned again in passing that teenage suicide ideation is higher among LGBT youth than among other kids. And they were both told their articles had to be censored. And they said, no, we won't, because this is about patient safety. And the government can't tell us to censor them, because they obviously use like AI or some sort of a search mechanism and just went through and looked for the acronyms. So we went in front of the court and we won within 2 days and just said, you can't censor people. That's a violation of the First Amendment for the government to come in and censor them because of their viewpoint, having nothing whatsoever to do with medicine, nothing whatsoever to do with patient safety. So I'm really proud, again, of those doctors who are stepping up and stepping forward, and of the fact that Judge Sirbokin ruled quickly on a preliminary injunction to say the articles have to be put back up.
You know, and obviously, as you said, because the LGBTQ, you can't utter those words or write those words. You know, the Secretary of the Treasury, who is arguably one of the most important officials, because he's the primary defender, along with Peter Navarro, of the tariffs, is openly gay. Bissett, is that how you pronounce his name? Has he ever said, of course, you don't say anything if you work for Trump about, okay,
right.
Forget that.
Do you know that RFK Jr. wants to prohibit all these scientists from publishing in things like the New England Journal of Medicine?
His own scientists,
right.
his own scientists, yes.
Yeah,
right.
And isn't that bizarre too? That those are
these attacks on free
publications.
speech. This is why the constitutional principles of things like freedom of speech and due process of the law and equality are so important right now, because those are the things that will ultimately save us in the courts. So we have to go back to first principles. And
my favorites, what's that?
I just want to add one quick thing on the Quincy story.
What is it?
And this where the local press is so terribly important, and we have to protect the local press, including National Public Radio and WGBH. But I want to GBH. I want to give a shout out to Peter Blandino, who was the reporter at the Patriot Ledger, who first broke that story in Quincy. And we wouldn't have even known about it until the statues were up if Peter Blandino had not done that.
And good for the Patriot Ledger, because their staff has been slashed and dashed over the years, and good for the reporters.
And it would not have come to our attention. It just so shows why it's so important that we protect local news.
I think you would have noticed when the 10-foot statues went up. You might have known then. So I want to say one last thing before you go. My favorite story of the day on the legal front is the story, the title of which is, "With Trump, no good deed goes unpunished." If you were to say to me, Carol Rose, who is the single most important person on the planet to the, quote, success, and I use the term advisedly, of the first term of Donald Trump, without a moment's thought, I would say Leonard Leo from the Federalist Society, which is a conservative legal society that basically put the judge nominee list together for him, helped Trump convince hard-right conservatives that he was one of them, whether he was or not. And because Trump is now upset that some of his own judges are ruling against him. For example, the judge on that trade court with the tariffs and some other judges. He now refers to Leonard Leo as a sleazebag and this is a quote, a bad person who in his own way probably hates America. Do you think anybody from Rudy Giuliani to, what was the name of the woman who lost her law license, who represented him?
Sidney Powell.
Sidney Powell, all these. Does anybody learn their lesson that ultimately Trump abandons everybody?
No, they don't seem to learn the lesson,
just
Jim.
incredible.
I think the allure of power is so great that it overcomes common sense and
Well, see, this Leonard
honesty.
Leo guy, big Catholic, is heading up the Federalist Society. Sleazebag is not a word that necessarily comes to mind when you
He
look
hates
at
America, though. He's a bad person who, in his own way, whatever that means, probably hates America, and he's a sleazebag. So there you go.
Trump expects loyalty from everyone and shows it to none.
By the way, he wasn't
Leo
disloyal.
Hasn't done anything. He's just appointed these judges, and they're not as MAGA as Trump wants them to be.
Well, you know who he's
Thank
also upset
God.
with? Right behind you, there was a story a minute ago on CNN. He's out of his mind over Amy Coney Barrett, who has shown some independence.
Who predicted that, by the way?
You did, actually. I must admit. You also said John Roberts, who wrote the immunity decision, would be independent.
After I read about the law, I was wrong about him, but I have hope.
You were right about Coney Barrett.
That she's not as much of a nut.
You know, I share with you that, and I think we have. I mean, people just say it's a completely captured court. I would say that Thomas and Alito seem to be pretty much a lost cause from a civil rights and civil liberties.
Yes,
but I think the others, we can find a way. We're working really hard to find a way to get to them.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Hope
Here
is a
we
political
are.
act, Jim. Hope
And
is a
at least,
political act.
she recused herself from cases, as she should have.
Right.
Amy Coney Barrett, where Alito doesn't recuse
Never
himself
does.
from anything, and Clarence Thomas doesn't recuse himself from anything.
Right.
And it's just really, really quite horrible.
And by the way, in the case where she recused herself, the outcome was 4-4, and in all likelihood, had she not recused herself,
It would've
the
gone the
side
other way.
that she supported would have won.
Right.
But she did the ethical thing
She did the ethical
and recused herself. Okay. Nice to see
Carol
you.
Rose,
Nice
thank
to
you
Keep up
very
the good
much.
Thank you
work.
so much.
It's a grotesque. It is not a gargoyle.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
When you get a chance, look at those statues. You will not believe it.
One might say they're
Okay.
grotesque.
Good to see you,
We've been
Carol
speaking
Rose.
with Carol Rose, Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union. It's Quincy, St. Florian, and Michael the Archangel. Unbelievable. Coming up after a quick break, Lee Pelton, President and CEO of the Boston Foundation, is here. He's going to tell us about the thrashing of the finest universities in the country, of course, led by Harvard, and also the thrashing by the Trump administration of nonprofits, which do a lot of great work. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Trusted, local news.
Local healthcare leaders are reacting with alarm to the news that the CDC is no longer recommending COVID vaccines for healthy children and pregnant women.
GBH News.
Service will be limited on the Fairmont commuter rail line that's for a track replacement. It goes through the fall.
Here for what matters to you.
Governor Healy says roughly 40 regulatory measures have now been streamlined. Less red tape for business owners while...
GBH 89.7. Online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Polar Beverages, family made since 1882. Founded in Worcester, Massachusetts by Dennis Crowley. Offering a range of sparkling seltzers, mixers, and dry sodas. Product information and locations at polarbeverages.com.
And Burton's Grill and Bar, serving weekend brunch with dishes like cast iron French toast, chicken and waffles, and short rib hash. A gluten-free menu is available, with 8 locations in Greater Boston. burtonsgrill.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The mayor will join us here at the library from 1 to 2 on June 17th. The governor will join us at the library from 11 to 12 on June 25th. And the attorney general will join us next month, July 9th, from 11 to 12 to take our questions and yours. Joined now at the library desk by Lee Pelton. Lee is the president and CEO of the Boylston Foundation, a member of GBH's Board of Trustees, and he previously served as the 12th president of Emerson College. Lee, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you.
So,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, as always. So, as everybody knows, Harvard University getting thrashed, billions and billions of dollars taken away from them. But there's some clamoring now about why there doesn't seem to be more support for them. I mean, it's not just them, it's other schools too, but they're the worst hurt. Why there isn't a coalition standing up, like, all across the country?
Well, Harvard changed my life. And as a graduate student and as a recipient of the Harvard Medal and being Board of Overseers, I love the institution. But I am sick and tired of hearing about it.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is because it's a distraction. Because as you said, this is not just about Harvard and Trump. This is about Trump and higher education generally. And what makes me upset is that the very few of the 2,600 university and college presidents have nothing to say. Dead silence.
Right.
And they are afraid and intimidated, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves. It's cowardice.
Well, and also, can I add one thing to your list? And the lesson I think they should have learned is the one university that decided that I won't stop at silence, that I'll move to capitulation. As Marjorie says every day, has Columbia gotten their $400 million back yet?
No.
And the answer is no.
Every day in plain sight, we see this every day. You capitulate and you think you're going to get something in return, and you end up with nada.
So how do you explain this? I mean, did you just use the word cowardice? I think you did.
Yeah.
I mean, I would use that too, but I don't come from that world. You spent a lot of your life in that higher ed world. So is there more to it? Is it just fear, or what is it?
So this may be an extreme example, but Martin Luther King said, "I would rather be dead than afraid."
Yeah.
I would be rather dead than afraid. And this is a time to not be afraid. If there was ever a time for colleges and universities in the U.S. to show some real action and get together, and rather than having these collective letters that anybody can sign on to, I mean, they have no value whatsoever. What they need in that sector is collective action, and they should all be meeting broadly maybe under the umbrella of the American Council on
So what form
Education.
would that collective action take, Lee Pelton?
Well, first of all, it would take legal action. Flood the White House with legal action, because that is what Trump and his administration is doing, and they should do that too.
Are you speaking under your former colleagues in the university president, provost world?
No, not really. Maybe a few.
But aren't there a few stories about faculties doing more? Didn't I read some stuff this morning about teachers getting together, people that are members of the faculty at these different schools, trying to urge what you're talking about, some more chutzpah?
Yeah. And I think, my former colleagues would say, Lee, you're just being too hard on us. Well, I'm sorry, but you're collective letters is not enough. There's got to be specific directed action towards the administration, and I'm not seeing it across the board.
I don't think we are seeing it across the board.
We should say, by the way, in the spirit of fairness, we've had a couple of college presidents who've been on the show. Just coming, I think, regardless of what your message is, the president of Wesleyan, the president of Mount Holyoke, the president of Assumption, with whom we disagreed on a few issues, but he was willing to answer questions about the direction the higher ed should take. That's really important.
Michael at Wesleyan, he is an exception.
He's
no
incredible.
doubt about it.
He is really, so's the woman who runs Mount Holyoke, I should say. But, one of the things that, I don't want to explain it because I am 100% with you, even though I don't have your wealth of knowledge or experience in that world. I would guess that there are, unlike the board of directors or whatever it's called, the corporation at Harvard now that is allegedly telling Alan Garber to fight, we know the history of the corporation there who did virtually nothing to support Claudine Gay. We know that leaders there, we have Khalil Gibran Muhammad on quite regularly when he's now at Princeton but sort of part-time at Harvard. When he was named, and his class was named by Virginia Fox, the chair of the Education Committee, and savaged as this racist, horrible thing, he told us the only communication he got was a private email from one of the leaders at Harvard University. So I guess where I'm going, and I'm going off, maybe it's the boards of directors. It's not an excuse, but maybe an explanation that are more cautious than some of these presidents would like to be. Is that?
I think that's probably true in some cases. I can't give you any examples. I could make some guesses about where that is. I know that the corporation at Harvard has been very out front, very supportive, in a very aggressive way. I'm going to say this.
Please.
I was dean of the Dartmouth College for 8 years. I am deeply disappointed that the current president has done nothing, has not even signed a collective letter. What is that going to cost you?
And Trump hasn't gone after Dartmouth College. It's the only one of the 7 Ivy League schools. Are there 8 Ivy League schools? Okay. 7 sisters, 8 Ivy Leagues. Okay. So it's the only one that has not been targeted is Dartmouth.
I get.
She did. In fairness, while she was playing along, after she took a lot of heat after I think there was a story in the New York Times about her playing along, alumni and faculty took her on, and I think she's moderated her. I don't know what noun I should use, not capitulation, but cooperation, for lack of a better expression, but I'm still glad you named her. So that's the state of higher ed.
Well, before we move on from that, though, you mentioned how Harvard had changed your life. Do you think Harvard survives in a reasonable form here, or is it just going to be, as some people think, decades before they can rebuild, especially the research?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict. I think this is a long-term effort, not a short-term effort. And I do believe that Harvard will come out of this very well, maybe years downstream.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Because the ramifications are you're going to have a lot of international students who are going to think twice
Absolutely.
about coming to any college or university
in the whole country.
in America, and Harvard being a prominent one. So there's going to be some of that flight that, and if you got, I think it's a third of the student body or a quarter of the student body at Harvard is made up of international students. I prefer that to saying foreign students. And so, we'll see. But the other thing we need to realize is that this is not just about Trump either. This is about a whole different set of values across the nation, in the House, in the Senate, in state legislatures. So it's not, we can talk about Trump, but he's just emblematic of a larger systemic change in the nation. And in my view, it didn't have to be that way.
And by the way, some of the attacks on higher education are supported by some of the most sycophantic Republicans in Congress who went to Harvard, who went to Yale, who went to Princeton, who went to the University of Pennsylvania, but they're so scared of Donald Trump they can't speak to what they gained from these things. On the international student front, for just a second, and we had 2 Fridays ago, we had 2 wonderful young people, one who was the co-president of the Harvard student body from Pakistan, who was graduating. At that point, he didn't know if he'd graduate because he wasn't sure what, and then the court stepped in and he did. And a young guy from Sweden, a sophomore, who not only wasn't sure if he'd come back himself next year, regardless of what happened. We asked them both, what would you say to high school seniors back in Pakistan and Sweden who were thinking of coming to the United States? And they both loved Harvard, and they both essentially said, I wouldn't encourage them to come here because of the uncertainty and the climate. When you were president of Emerson, you were a big international outreach. Why? Why was that something that mattered to you?
Well, for a lot of reasons. One is that I knew that there would be a decline in, American applicants, and so I was preparing for the future. And so when I was there, we set up a program at the College of Paris. We set up one in Sydney, another in Barcelona, and then one in Switzerland. And what was wonderful about it and what was important about it is that our students had opportunities then to spend some of their time in those cities, in those countries, and some of their time in the U.S. So these are not places where you would go for 4 years. It would be a blended educational experience, some in here and some time, some in, international.
What would you tell a kid in Paris or Sydney or Barcelona who was thinking not of going to one of those schools there, but coming to the United States in fall of 2026 or 2025?
That's a tough question. Because I think it's on an individual basis, but I would try to do my best to encourage them to come here and to benefit the kind of bi-coastal kind of education and experience that they're going to get. Whether or not they will do it, I don't know. I don't know what the impact.
We're talking to Lee Pelton, who is the head of the Boston Foundation.
Well, let's talk about nonprofits. Trump seems to have his eyes out to gut nonprofits as well, but in this so-called, and this is what Trump has called the big beautiful bill, the provision on taxing nonprofits is gone. So that's a good thing. We don't know, I don't know, maybe you know what happened, but it's gone. That could have been a devastating...
Not the provision on taxing endowments over a certain level, but the one removing the tax-exempt status.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Removing tax-exempt status and withdrawing federal funding that goes to certain nonprofits.
Why'd that happen?
By the way, it's not the big, beautiful bill.
It's not.
It's the big...
It's a horrible bill.
It's the big, ugly bill.
Big, horrible bill. That's right.
So let's
horrible.
Get this straight. So I... that's going to devastate some nonprofits. make them even more anxious than they are today. And that's a sector where there should be conversations, and they're not, because I'm a part of it. There should be conversations about consolidation. You know, you've got these little tiny little satellites here and there. They're already struggling, and now they're struggling even more. And there should be conversations about catalyzing. And I think the Boston Foundation, before I arrived, tried to do that with something called the Catalyst Fund.
Are those conversations going on?
Not seriously, not that I know of. I'm not part of them.
We should be clear. Can I clarify one thing about the conversation you just had? This so-called a nonprofit killer provision that said if the Secretary of the Treasury determines that your organization is supporting terrorism, whatever that means, he almost unilaterally, without due process, without an evidentiary basis, could revoke your tax-exempt status. It was stripped from the bill. It could reappear in the Senate version, but it was something that a lot of Republicans in the House wanted, which would be a nonprofit killer. You know, speaking of
and by the way, that flips the legal system on its head. You have to prove that you haven't done something.
Yeah.
Well, what also flips the legal system on the head is the provision that's still in there that basically takes away the contempt power of federal courts should it survive in the Senate. You know, speaking of nonprofits, you run one, but you're also on the board of another one that matters a lot to us, GBH, and I assume people heard in the Globe or elsewhere that an announcement was made by Susan Goldberg, the CEO here. 6% staff cuts yesterday. That's on top of the 4% last year. And we should say, and we should have said this earlier in the show, 2 people from the newsroom, really talented, wonderful, 8 people from the world, a fabulous operation that our boss, Dan Lothian, runs. Horribly sad things, and there are another 35 people too, in our thoughts, which are not worth much, but we want to know we're thinking about all of you and help in any way we can. You're on the board. What do you make of this? What do you have to share with people about these decisions?
Well, it was a very hard decision for Susan Goldberg to make. I know her very, very well, and she is very thoughtful. I know she has lost a lot of sleep over this. And it was not just related to, in the announcement you see, it was not just related to the Trump administration, but there were other issues.
Like what?
As well. Well, there were some funding that was lost for certain programs and so on. And so, but it was very complicated. And all I can tell you is that she did this with honesty, integrity, and with an open heart and an open mind.
And again, we're thinking about all of our colleagues, and we're there for them if in any way that they think we can help. We're talking to Lee Pelton, head of the Boston Foundation, on the board at GBH.
I just want to mention before I get off this topic, on a lighter note, if you read the story in the Globe about the cuts to GBH.
And you read the comments, right,
Most of them are aimed at Jim. You should have gotten rid of Jim first. That would have solved your problem. Some of them at me too, but they're mostly at you, Jim.
Really? Oh, I didn't see. They're
not that critical at GBH. They are wildly critical. They basically say we could solve all the problems, lay off nobody if they just got rid of me.
That's right.
That's
get rid
the
of Jim.
central theme in the
that is the theme.
The comments. Thank you for bringing that up, Marjorie.
Colorful language.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. A couple of them aren't crazy about you either. Just to be
well,
clear.
it's true. Some of them aren't crazy about me, but you got me outgunned on that.
I do.
One.
Who could not be crazy about you?
Exactly.
How's that possible?
A lot of people don't like me either. Okay. So you mentioned this before, though. This whole tax-exempt status thing in the big ugly bill, as you want to call it. We shouldn't be too happy about this right now because it hasn't gone through the Senate, so we just don't know. Do we know why the president is so unhappy with nonprofits?
Oh, well, because I think the belief is that they're ideologically to the left, by and large.
And that's it.
We're trying to get rid. That's the administration trying to get rid of, certain kinds of ideology that it's not consistent with the administration's ideology.
Yeah.
Well, they also mostly help people of color and low income people, neither of which
is not American,
he's crazy
by the
about.
way.
Right, exactly.
So talk about having run Emerson. You hear a lot of people complaining now online. Why do we want to get these international students? Why don't we just get rid of the international students, more room for the American students? Why do we care about people coming here from other countries? Why do we care?
Because they enrich the college experience, the university experience. They provide perspectives that are much needed in a college or university, lest we become, especially parochial and focus only on the United States. Remember, the college experience is more than just going to a classroom. It's being outside of the classroom and engaging with others, developing a community, an enlightened community, and that's what you're going to get with these international students. The other issue is, as you know, there's a cliff coming for enrollment, not too far away, and so the population of eligible students to apply and go to colleges and university is going to plummet significantly.
Because of birth rates.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this is an opportunity to keep those enrollments robust. So it makes economic sense.
And also, doesn't it help the cost for Americans to go down? Because a lot of people from other countries either pay themselves full freight or the government pays for them, so that enables schools to give more scholarships to Americans who can't pay full freight.
That is correct. Almost all colleges and universities, you should know, you American students, that your international colleagues are subsidizing your education.
Well, that's a big deal because college is very expensive.
But that's too narrow. I mean, obviously that's an economic benefit for kids who are here who can't afford it. The economic benefit of having 1.1 million international students in this country who go to restaurants, who rent apartments, who buy things. Well, you don't need the Globe.
Yeah,
it's so obvious. They spend. It's 1 million people. So even if you hate higher ed, if you buy all this Trump BS about the elitism of higher ed, it matters to the economy that voters say they care most about. You only have 30 seconds. Are you surprised that people are not rising up? And I know June 14th, there are allegedly going to be demonstrations all over the country. In 30 seconds, are you surprised that there's not more of a in-the-street kind of reaction?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Why? And quickly.
Well, because people have to recognize where we are in this nation in this particular time. This is not just about Donald Trump. This is about a serious kind of deterioration of American democracy, and that is what is at stake here. Democracy as a form of government, democracy as a social contract, and democracy as an American value. That is what is at stake here.
So 3 of us are ready to take to the streets. We'll start there and we'll build from there. Lee Pelton, excellent to see you. Thanks so much for your work and your thoughts. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Lee Pelton is the president and CEO of the Boston Foundation, a member of GBH's Board of Trustees, and he previously served as the 12th president of Emerson College. Thank you very much, Lee Pelton. Coming up after this quick break, 2 more things. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, state lawmakers are debating a bill that would use camera surveillance to make some traffic fines automatic. A commission on trade between Massachusetts and Ireland is meeting for the first time. And as Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern balanced running a country with being a new mom. Her reflections on leadership and motherhood, and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked /1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the 2nd consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Time for two more things. Marjorie, you started off.
Okay. As most of you know, President Trump went after these big law firms. He didn't like them if they represented immigrants or they represented some of his political enemies. 9 law firms quickly caved. Some of them stood up, though, and one of them that stood up is Wilmer Hale here in Boston. And people may recall that years ago when William Hale had a different name, Joseph Welch was the guy that stood up to Senator Joseph McCarthy during the famous McCarthy hearings with his now famous line, "Have you no sense of decency, sir?" Well, Wilmer Hale got before a judge, and I love this judge. His name is Judge Richard Leon. He is from Natick, Jim. He wears a bow tie. He went to Holy Cross in Worcester, earned his law degree at Suffolk University. George W. Bush appointed him to the bench, and he loves exclamation points, just like Donald Trump loves exclamation points. So in his decision saying that Trump siding with Wilmer Hale and saying it was illegal to go after Wilmer Hale. By the way, the reason President Trump didn't like Wilmer Hale, you know why? It was because Robert Mueller used to work there, who the former FBI director who led this probe into Russian interference with the 2016 presidential election. Anyway, this judge, Richard Leon, has these exclamation points everywhere and says things like, Trump's gumbo gives the court heartburn, big exclamation point after that. And over again, he points to things at the end with exclamation points. But the bottom line here is that even though the decision could be appealed, even though it's not totally over, this judge has basically said Trump 0, Wilmer Hale wins, at least so far, and what the president has done is illegal, and we're glad that Wilmer Hale is prevailing.
Well, there's a second bottom line. The second bottom line is the 4 firms that capitulated to Trump and contributed $950 million of pro bono services look like fools. And yesterday,
total fools.
I don't know if you know, a 5th partner from the first capitulator, Paul Weiss, left Paul Weiss to join a firm from people who are unhappy with their former bosses.
Paul
so can
Weiss
we move
looks
to
terrible.
law firms to Milford? I want to talk a little bit about Marcelo Gomes da Silva. The taking of this guy by ICE, the 18-year-old high school student, is a perfect example of the cruelty, the sadism, the incompetence of the Trump administration. Everybody knows Trump, candidate Trump, and President Trump said, I'm only going to focus on the hardened criminals, the rapists, the murderers. Everybody knows Marcelo is neither of these things. Despite that, here are 2 leaders of ICE, including the regional director in New England. They're sandwiching a reporter in the middle. Listen to what they had to say about having taken the wrong guy. Here it is.
In regard to Marcelo Gomes, he remains in ICE custody. He was not the target of the investigation, but like we have repeatedly said, sanctuary policies put us in a position to go out into communities and look for people. He's 18 years old, he's unlawfully in this country. And unfortunately, we had to go to Milford to look for someone else, and we came across him, and he was arrested.
You're looking for someone dangerous and violent? Well, I'll take that one. So we're looking for his father. So obviously he's the father of the year because brought his son up here illegally as well.
Are these the most classless, cruel people? He's not just not a criminal, Marcelo. He's not even the right guy. But the 2 ICE people say it doesn't really matter. We've got our man. And by the way, his father, who they're intimating is some horrible person, as we said earlier in the day, they're alleging he was driving 100 miles an hour, which I'm not sure is a deportable offense. Was he arrested for driving 100 miles an hour?
No.
No, he was not. So the reason I'm mentioning this is not just to mention the unfairness and the cruelty. I'm mentioning it because so many callers to the show say there's nothing we can do. Well, look at the people of Milford. His teachers, people who weren't his teachers, people who didn't know him personally. His classmates, elected officials taking to the streets in Milford to support this young man and his family. I don't know if it'll lead to his freedom, but I do know, and I know you agree, Marjorie, it's the right thing to do. Voices should be heard when there's injustice. And I hope all of us will look to Milford. I hope he's free soon.
And again,
young Marcello, but this is the perfect example of the perfect response.
He was brought to the United States when he was under 5 years old, because
Yes,
he started kindergarten here. So what did ICE think he was supposed to do? Self-deport himself?
Go back to Brazil where he doesn't know anybody.
By himself?
Right.
I mean, it's just crazy. Does the guy even speak Portuguese? I don't know. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But anyway, it's
Good for the people of Milford, though,
Milton.
standing up.
Okay, coming up after the 1 o'clock news, NBC Sports Boston's Treny Casey is here. We're going to talk about 4 ways women are physically stronger than men. Can't wait for that discussion. And, of course, what conversation would Treny be complete without the latest about Bill Belichick and his 24-year-old girlfriend, Jordan Hudson. We're going to talk about that as well. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If you made a recent contribution to GBH, your donation could be doubled by your employer through our Matching Gifts program. Find out if your donation can be matched at gbh.org/matchinggifts.
Support for GBH comes from you and the University of Massachusetts Amherst. United around a vision for public access to revolutionary education, UMass Amherst gives students the opportunity to seek solutions to the challenges of today. Learn more at umass.edu. And The Lyric Stage, presenting Hello, Dolly. Brimming with classic musical theater tunes, endearing characters, and good humor, Hello, Dolly is on stage May 16th through June 22nd at Lyric Stage Boston. Ticket information at lyricstage.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browning, head on Hour 3 of BPR, live from the Boston Public Library. NBC Sports Boston's Jordan Hudson correspondent, Treny Casey, is here. We'll talk about a new batch of sports bars cropping up across the country dedicated to women's sports. And we'll hear Treny's reaction to new research into ways women actually outcompete men when it comes to strength. Think resilience, recovery, and pain tolerance.
I'm Marjorie Egan. We'll end our Tuesday talking coffee, based on a new study that finds evidence linking the black sludge to living a longer, healthier life. We'll open phone and text lines. What's your relationship with coffee? Does it feel as healthy as this study suggests? And while we're at it, iced coffee. Is it a year-round New England obsession you cannot live without? 30 minutes of coffee talk is next on the third hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The National Weather Service says it's hiring more than 100 employees to stabilize operations at its field offices. NPR's Greg Allen reports they were forced to scale back after the Trump administration cut nearly 600 positions.
A National Weather Service spokesperson says the new hires will fill positions at field offices where there's, quote, the greatest operational need. Following job cuts ordered by the Trump administration, some of the service's more than 100 field offices were no longer staffed around the clock. Some have also cut back on weather balloon launches, critical in gathering data needed for local and national forecasts. Following severe tornado outbreaks and with the beginning of hurricane season, the Trump administration granted the Weather Service an exemption to a government-wide hiring freeze. The agency says it will soon begin advertising for the mission-critical field positions. Greg Allen, NPR News, Miami.
The Democratic mayor of Newark is suing the acting U.S. attorney for New Jersey and a Homeland Security official. NPR's Ryan Lucas reports the lawsuit stems from his arrest outside of an immigration detention facility last month.
Newark Mayor Ras Baraka filed his lawsuit against acting U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, Alina Habba, and a Homeland Security investigations official named Ricky Patel. Baraka accuses them both of false arrest and malicious prosecution. He also accuses Habba, who was Trump's personal attorney, of defamation. Federal authorities arrested Baraka outside the Delaney Hall Immigration Detention Facility near Newark last month. Federal prosecutors charged him with misdemeanor trespass, but later dropped the charge. A judge admonished prosecutors over the case and questioned what he called the mayor's quote-unquote hasty arrest. Now, in his lawsuit, Baraka is seeking compensatory and punitive damages, but does not specify an amount. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
Ukraine says it's detonated underwater explosives targeting a key road and rail bridge that connects the occupied peninsula of Crimea to Russia. NPR's Joanna Kakissis reports the bridge is used by Russia's military as a key logistics route.
After Russia illegally annexed Crimea in 2014, Russian President Vladimir Putin pushed to build the 12-mile-long bridge, which opened in 2018. Ukraine's security service confirmed it had planned Tuesday's attacks and claimed the blast severely damaged the bridge's base. It also posted video footage showing a blast in the sea and a photo of damage to the bridge. Russia says the bridge was temporarily closed to traffic. This is the second covert attack on Russia's infrastructure in the last 3 days. On Sunday, Ukraine struck Russia's strategic bomber fleet using drones smuggled deep into the Russian heartland. Joanna Kakissis, NPR News, Kyiv.
On Wall Street, the Dow was up 194 points. This is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Overdose deaths in Boston decreased by 38% last year, so says new data released by the city's Public Health Commission. Report says the 38% drop is the lowest number of related deaths since 2015, an especially promising sign within Boston's 2024 overdose data is that the significant drop in deaths of Black and Latino residents. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu says the new data represents the impact of our collective efforts to combat the opioid crisis and emphasizes the city's continued support to communities who are disproportionately affected. And if you're looking for some historic fun this summer, the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Bunker Hill just might be your thing. The anniversary of the Revolutionary War. The battle fought in Charlestown is June 17th, 2 weeks from today. At an event previewing the commemoration, Massachusetts Secretary of State Bill Galvin announced that the Commonwealth Museum's special exhibit on the battle will be extended with a range of artifacts staying on view beyond the original end date this month. Galvin says this exhibit can help remind people about the fragile nature of democracy.
It's the importance of recognizing now it's our turn. As it was theirs back then, it is ours now to protect and preserve democracy.
This exhibit will now be up through July 9. Red Sox, Angels, second game of their three-game series tonight at Fenway. It's a 7:10 start. We're at 75 degrees outside our studios in Brighton. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, where drivers can compare direct rates using Progressive's rate comparison tool. Customers can see options and rates side by side. More at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Thank you. And streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back here tomorrow and back here on Friday. Ask the Mayor is June 17th from 1 to 2. Ask the Governor June 25th from 11 to noon. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined now by Treny Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston, and a BPR contributor. Hey, Treny.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hi, Treny. So, I love this story about women in some sports turn out to be stronger and more able to endure and more resilient than men.
Yes.
Do tell. This is great.
So this is a...
Treny just ran a marathon this weekend.
But I need to clarify.
Yep.
I jog walked it. It was a training run for me that I instead of trying to find like 28 miles to run, because I ran 28 total miles on Saturday. I ran a mile warm up and then I did the marathon and then I did like a walk cool down for this, but it's for the MS Run the US relay that I'm gearing up for. I'll start 1 month from today is when I start, and I have to do 160 miles in 6 days. I've been just running a lot of miles, so I went somewhere else to have a change of scenery. It took me forever, by the way, to do this marathon.
If people
so
didn't hear,
impressive.
I don't care about this marathon. I care about your bigger thing. Tell us about this MS thing you said in passing. If people didn't hear when you announce it? Why are you doing it?
So my Aunt Sandy, who is also my godmother, was diagnosed with MS when I was a little kid in the early 80s. And she passed away in 1995 from complications due to MS. And a good friend of mine back home in Wisconsin, her mother also was diagnosed with MS. And while her mom was still alive, she ran across the country all by herself to raise money and awareness for MS, and she didn't raise as much money as she wanted to, and rather than abandoning the dream, she just pivoted because she realized it's really hard to get someone to dedicate an entire summer and run 3,620 miles from California to New York, and she turned it into a relay across America. So there's 21 runners who run from Santa Monica, California to New York City. I am runner number 15, and I will run 100. I think it ends up being, although I think I'm going to add on to get to 160 because that's what I've been saying. They had to shorten our finish is different than it normally is just for finding a place to hold a party type of thing. So I think it's technically 158.3 miles across the state of Wisconsin from July 1st through July 6th. So I'll run about 30 miles a day most days, and then hopefully on the last day I'll only have 8 to 10 miles left. And then I can finish and party, and then I'm done. So that's why I'm running all these.
Where do people learn more about this effort?
You can go to my Instagram. That's the easiest way. I have a link tree. You can link to it. And actually, all donations this week, some friends that we're close with would like to stay anonymous have offered to match all donations this week up to $5,000.
Oh, my God.
So my hope is I raise $10,000 extra this week. You only have to raise $10,000 total, but I'm trying to raise $67,000. Because my aunt would have been 67 years old this year. And I'm competitive, and that would make me the highest fundraiser in the history of the relay.
Good for you. That's
That's why I ran a marathon. But that also leads us back to 4 ways that women are stronger than men. I brought up the Washington Post put it on their Instagram today. So it's a nice little easy slide so you can see why women are better than men. Endurance, in test after test, female muscles outlast men's when doing repetitive work. So they talk about this in terms of and you hear this when you talk about long distance endurance running.
Yeah.
The gap is really, 26.2 miles, it's still a pretty significant gap of how fast a woman can go versus a man. And that's evident if you are a runner and you know what the qualifying standards are for the Boston Marathon. A woman's time is 30 minutes slower than a man's time in the exact same age group. But when you start to get into what I'm doing, the really long distance stuff, like the 50Ks, the 50 milers, the 100 milers, women really close the gap, and it's partially because of just the way that our body metabolizes. We have extra fat because we're I don't want to say we're put on this earth to have kids, but we are biologically built to procreate and carry children, and so we carry more fat than men, and so we tap into those fat storages instead of superficial carbohydrates. So when we eat carbohydrates, we can go longer, faster for a longer period of time, but that also apparently applies to strength training. So when women strength train versus men's strength training, men can do more weight, fewer reps. But if Jim and I both tried to bench press, we'll call it 50 pounds, I theoretically should be able to do at a lower weight more reps than Jim over a long period of time because of the way that my muscles work.
Any number of reps is more than 0, so I don't think that would be much of an issue.
Fair. My other favorite one is pain tolerance. Women have a higher pain tolerance than men.
Women do have babies.
Women have babies. As I said today, a man with a cold is the equivalent of a woman under a fallen burning building. Anytime any guy gets sick, he's like, oh my God, so sick. A woman's got like a leg hanging off, and she's like, it's fine, I'll finish vacuuming before I go to the hospital.
That's right. That is right.
Longevity, this I also found to be interesting. Women tend to survive disease and starvation longer than men. It's something with the Y chromosome is actually sort of a negative thing for men. Women, that we have better immunity also. That was the other thing. So those two are together, which is why oftentimes, if any of you have ever visited older relatives, and when my grandparents were in assisted living, they always had a list of the people who were 100 or over. And you look around and it's all women and one guy, you know? So women we're just built to last, ladies.
You know what I think though too, in distance running, or maybe in other sports as well, but women seem to last longer. They can perform more into their 30s and even 40s sometimes. Yes. The men peak out earlier.
And a lot of women find, and I'm sure there's a scientific study, this is sort of anecdotal, but a lot of women find that after they give birth, they actually have better performances later in life after giving birth. So I don't know if it's like you just develop a different pain tolerance, or if there's actually like a hormonal difference or something that happens when you like trigger all the things in your body that happen when you have a baby. But and I've seen it. Like my coach, my running coach, she's tried for years to break 3 hours in the marathon, and it took her 8 years, but at 30, almost 39 years old, she finally broke 3. So she was like 38 and 10 and a half months when she broke 3 hours in the marathon.
Good for her.
So yeah, it's pretty
Good
amazing.
for her.
You know, the best line, the best
basically,
summary,
Jim, what we're telling you is we're better than you.
That's right.
I've been told that before. By the way, just so people know, if you haven't read the Washington Post piece, this is not a thesis of a journalist. This is science.
This is science, yes.
And the great line that I think summarizes it perfectly, this woman, Sophia Nymphius from some university in Perth, Australia, the quote is, "Female bodies have superior fatigue resistance," which really sums up all these things. It's
and we
pretty
should
impressive.
mention, too, that the 18-year-old Audrey Jimenez was the first girl to win a Division I high school state wrestling championship competing against boys. Yeah.
I'm not sure which category that fit in, though, when I read the thing.
I don't know, but she's in there.
Yeah.
That to me is, I will say this, like that, I wonder if that is strength or length. Like maybe wrestling was actually weirdly really big at my high school. I don't know why, but we had a pretty good wrestling team.
Well, it's
and
huge
my
in the
nephew,
Midwest, right?
huge in the Midwest. My little nephew wrestles now. He loves it. But I do wonder, Marjorie, if it's that similar why it was brought up in there, because there wasn't like it was hard to find the correlation.
Yeah.
But my mind went to, you have to be able to outlast someone. Like if you can gain the physical strength, and I also don't know if that at that age in her weight class, maybe that young man hasn't fully grown and developed yet, and so they're a little bit more equal in terms of just brute raw strength, and that she was, to this article's point, able to wear him down over a longer period of time.
Okay, let's move on.
That's my best theoretical guess.
No, but it makes sense to me. What do I know? Okay, women's sports bars showing women's sports are
popping up all over the country. Come on, Boston. So the Axios, which is like my favorite thing to read every morning.
I love Axios.
It is easy to read. That's why I love it. It's easy to read.
too.
But I also find it to be,
I agree.
it's pretty fair and down the middle in a lot of interesting articles.
Good.
So they had this article over the weekend that I sent to Jamie and Zoe that were talking about all of these women-specific sports bars. It started in Portland, Oregon, but now as you look at the map, it's popping up across the country. And that speaks to something we talk about, I think, almost every week on this show, which is the popularity and the sustainability of women's sports. But the fact that people are investing money into something that is women's specific around women's athletics says, to me at least, that people think it has staying power, because restaurants are hard to run. They're expensive. There's like a high overhead cost and not always like a high return on your investment. So you have to, if you're an investor, you have to feel like this is going to be profitable and sustainable over the long term to keep investing in these places. And obviously, they have to also show success in other cities for other places to adopt them. So come on, Boston. I looked on the East Coast, and there's ones in New York, there's one in Chicago, they're all on the West Coast, and even in the Midwest, and we don't have one here.
So I need a favor from you, since you and Marjorie hang out from time to time, you're close to her. Marjorie, every either holiday, birthday, gives me the same thing. I love it, I have to say. The gift is always sausage of the month, salami of the month, bacon of the month.
That sounds super healthy.
It is healthy. And what I really want, but I have a trouble asking her, I've wanted for years a worn, sweaty jersey of one of my favorite athletes, maybe at halftime of a particular game. Do you know where she'd be able to get such a thing?
Yes, I just read the story. Now I can't remember the name of it, but
Neither can we.
It's like matchwornjerseys.com or something. So there is and it specializes in soccer jerseys right now, but there is a company that has started, and I actually think it's brilliant, right? Oy. So in only the first half, there is a company that now just recently signed a deal with the U.S. women's national team and the U.S. men's national soccer team. And what they do is, the example used in the article is, what's Rodman's I always forget.
His daughter.
His daughter.
He's a great soccer player. I can't
Trinity.
remember her name.
Trinity. Thank you. I almost said Tiffany, and it wasn't
This
Tiffany.
is Dennis Rodman's
Trinity
son.
Rodman
Daughter.
scores a goal in a U.S. Actually, I think it was an NWSL match, and she finishes at halftime, and she takes her jersey off, and the kit manager, instead of the equipment manager, they call him a kit manager, takes it, puts it under a UV light so they don't clean it, but they take away her DNA so that it can't be stolen and used in other ways, but it keeps the dirt, the mud, like that outdoorsy smell on it. She signs it, and then they auction it off, and you can buy a game-worn jersey. Now, understanding that these jerseys are important to some of these athletes, it may signify, an accomplishment or, maybe a first goal. They don't take all of them. They never take jerseys from the second half. They only take them from the first half in case it's an important match. But this is a brilliant way, and it didn't mention it till almost the end of the article, because as I'm reading it, I'm like, well, this is great, because Lionel Messi's jersey sold for $58,000, and I'm like,
oh my gosh.
And I believe it was an Alex Morgan jersey that sold for like $9,000. I think that was the highest ever sold.
What do you do with a
jersey.
sweaty jersey that someone else wore?
I think that if you have a, like when I was growing up, our basement was finished, and my dad had sports memorabilia all over. Now, we didn't have the kind of money to spend $58,000 on a Lionel Messi jersey, but if we did, you get it, you have it framed, and you hang it up, and it's a conversation starter. But they split their profits. So the company takes a profit, but they also share the profits with the teams and the organizations and the players. And also in this article, they talk about who's made the most, and it's Alex Morgan. Used to be Sophia Smith. She's now married to Sophia Wilson, and Trinity Rodman are the biggest benefactors.
Okay, after having her, I'll stay with Sausage of the Month, okay?
Don't you think, honestly though, don't you think it'd be cool, like if you love, let's say they expand this and start doing it to the WNBA, and you've been really excited about Caitlin Clark.
That'd be like $3 million for her.
Okay, but let's say it's not. Let's say your daughter for a monumental birthday spends $1,500 and you get this super cool first half signed Caitlin Clark framed. That's pretty cool that they actually wore in a game. Like, think about, did you see the story last week about how speaking of Caitlin Clark, a little girl was asking her for her jersey, and she actually said to her, I can't give you my jersey, which I now wonder why, because I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like just replace it. But she said, I'll give you my shoes, because she's got that big deal with Nike. So she took her shoes while she was walking out of the tunnel off of her feet, signed them, and handed them to this little girl. And that girl, I mean, like, how cool is that?
That is
and I know they're probably
great.
like stinky and gross because they're sneakers, but she probably wears different sneakers all the time. They probably don't even smell that bad.
That's really fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay, Marjorie, you waited long enough.
So let's get to the latest. What's going on with Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson and his job at the University of North Carolina?
They have been very quiet lately, which has sparked speculation of either they are A, just laying low because they've had enough, or B, as of June 1st, Bill Belichick is able to buy himself out of his contract at the University of North Carolina for $1 million. And a lot of people had circled that date on the calendar because when that exemption was originally put in by the University of North Carolina, most people figured, so the buyout prior to June 1st was $10 million for Belichick. And then after June 1st, it's a $1 million buyout. It should be noted, this is a way for Belichick to get himself out of the contract, not a way for the University of North Carolina to buy him out. Because if it was reversed, I think they'd buy him out, because I think this has already been like a disaster.
They have to pay him the whole $30 million, right?
They've got to pay him. So they're and some of that money is not salary. Some of it's they find other ways to pay these coaches, but. So everyone is sort of keeping an eye on, like, are they being quiet? Because is this the beginning of the end? Is he already feeling like, I don't want to be under the spotlight, this has been more than I wanted? Or are they just being quiet because they're like, you know what, let's just sort of sneak under the radar, not cause any more problems, and they'll start camping like right after probably 4th of July, like mid-July, late July, similar to the NFL. So it's also possible that we haven't heard a lot from them recently because they're doing what a lot of football coaches do this time of year, which is go on vacation, take some time away, go to their compounds on Nantucket and hang out. I cannot wait for Nantucket summer, by the way.
Why?
Because I feel like we're going to be getting a lot of juice from Nantucket this summer. I feel like they're going to be at like the chicken box, and maybe they'll be at like the gazebo drinking mudslides, and he'll be driving his like boat, which now has an extra ring on it. Will there be a wedding this summer? I don't know.
Maybe they're planning.
Can you explain something to me? Bill Simmons, who is huge. Bill Simmons, he's the Rewatchables podcast. He's huge.
He's great. And
really
he's
smart. And I'm going to play. Pablo Torre is the guy who's been following this story most religiously. You may not like how he covers it, but everybody is reading this stuff. And for those who text us and say how low rent it is, there was a story about Belichick and Jordan Hudson on the front page of the New York Times. This is not exactly. In any case, here's Bill Simmons going nuts on Pablo Torre for his coverage of Hudson and Belichick.
Pablo Torre would have done a long podcast about Leo Farnsworth trying to practice with the team and then done a media tour about it afterwards. I've never seen anybody dying on the stupider story for a week and a half while pretending you're a journalist. What the f*** was that? Whoa! Oh, Belichick's dating a girl. Oh, let me do 9 shows about it.
Is he like in the tank to Belichick? I don't know. Where's this coming
maybe he has a young girlfriend.
Well, no, 2 things stuck out to me here. I think there's 2 things at play. I'm putting my, all the psychology classes I took in college at work right now. 1, Bill Simmons is so jealous that Pablo Torre is being requested. It's not like Pablo Torre's walking around handing out flyers saying, can I come on your show and talk about Bill Belichick? Like, show after show after show is reaching out to Pablo Torre, and people are obsessed with it. And 2, I think Bill Simmons is such a Boston fan. And I've noticed this in some of the conversations around the office and with other big fans. They get very defensive of Bill, that this is stupid, this is tabloidy, why are we even talking about this? And I think it's because for people who watched and also sort of intimately covered Bill Belichick for years, it's pretty hard to watch a guy who had complete control of every narrative, completely do a 180 and be controlled by a 24-year-old young woman that now he may or may not be engaged to. So I think, I don't want to say watching like the deterioration, but it's kind of the deterioration of Bill Belichick's legacy, of his reputation.
I think that's
like
exactly
a guy who was held up to these standards and held up on this high pedestal has fallen more than a couple of rungs. And so I think for big super fans like Bill Simmons, it's like almost like you just don't want to believe it. Like, no, this is my coach and he's going to go. I mean, a lot of what I hear from people who defend him is, well, when he goes to North Carolina and they go 13-1 and go to a big bowl game, nobody will be talking about this anymore. And I'm like, do we really think he's going to go to North Carolina and go 13-1? Like, like what indication have you been given over the last 6 or 7 years that that's how this is going to go for Bill Belichick? I think it's really hard to see someone fall from grace.
Okay, can we talk about one other person who's in athletics in North Carolina? Cooper Flagg.
Oh, my
We have to move on for my favorite story,
Cooper
Jim.
Flagg, what's that?
My favorite story is about Charles Barkley.
Yeah, we'll get to him. Cooper Flagg.
I sent that this morning.
I just want to, it's a simple question you probably can't answer. Cooper Flagg is going to be likely the number 1 pick in the draft.
Consensus.
And we just learned a day or 2 ago, under this names, image, and likeness, as a college freshman, he made a mere $28 million.
Unbelievable, right?
So the question, quite simply, is
why go?
Why leave? You can make at least, let's say, $150 million through 4 years of college. You get to stay in college, have more fun than you have, I would argue, being a pro basketball player. And then you'd be a pro basketball player in 5 years.
I'll tell you why.
Why?
Because the risk of injury, right? So let's say in your sophomore, junior year of college where you're making $30 million a year, you blow out your knee. Now, that could happen in the pros as well, and you may never make that money again. But not only will he make his rookie contract, which I think they said if he goes number 1 overall will be like $64 million over 4 years.
Yeah.
He'll also get probably
less than he made in college.
Well, but he'll probably get even more endorsement deals for whatever team that he's with. He'll get more national endorsement deals. There may, and I don't know this, I'm just speculating, there may be a clause in his New Balance contract, which reportedly is worth $15 or $13 million, that once he goes to the NBA, that price may go up. But also, Jim, if he turns out to be as good as everyone thinks that he is, I think within 3 years of his NBA career, he can sign, and again, the NBA rules are weird, but at some point he can sign what's called a supermax deal. Like Jason Tatum just signed a supermax deal that pays him something like $58 million a year, and he's only 27 years old. So you take that, and then you add your other stuff on top of it. Like, there's no place that you can make that much money except the NBA.
I'd stay.
Okay, we have time for Charles Barkley.
Yes, we do.
Those kids don't realize how fun college is, Jim.
You know, I'm sort of a fair weather basketball fan. When the Celtics get really good, or team gets really good, I love to watch the games, and I get very disappointed when I turn on and the commentators are not Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal because they're so great
fabulous.
together.
Yeah.
Here's a little bit of sound. Their show is called Inside the NBA. This is Charles Barkley making Shaquille O'Neal laugh uncontrollably.
Like the first time I saw Shaq in person, I says, man, number one, damn, he ugly. But then I said, to see him, hey man, you know what I want? Meat.
What you want, Chuck?
I want real meat.
Shaq, see, come on, man.
Shaq, you
say it again, Chuck. What you want?
I want real meat. Okay. I don't want no cauliflower crab. I want good old-fashioned beef.
So you're watching the game. Plus, I mean, again, I'm not an expert in but it seems to me his commentary on the game is just superb. This is Barkley.
Yes.
And O'Neal.
And O'Neal.
All of them. Everybody.
Yeah.
Kenny, Shaq, I mean, even Ernie, who hosts it, like, they are no holds barred.
They're great.
Despite having a huge rights deal up through this year with the NBA, they were not afraid to criticize the NBA. So where we're going with this is they're moving to ESPN.
Yeah, so is that a good thing for all of sports America or not a good thing?
I mean, it's a good thing they're keeping them together, but this article that I sent you guys he's a columnist in the Wall Street Journal, their sports columnist.
Jason Gay?
Jason Gay, thank you. I almost said Jason Stark, but he's a baseball writer. Jason Gay asks a very good question. Will ESPN let them be the inside the NBA team? Now, the TNT crew, they're going to continue to produce this show with the crew, the same crew that's been working out of Atlanta. So I have faith that ESPN isn't going to tinker with it. But ESPN is also known to be a little more beholden to the leagues. And maybe be not as critical of certain things to protect those very expensive rights deals that they have with all of the leagues. Many of their shows are not quite as controversial, entertaining as, say, the Inside the NBA. As some other shows. And so that's the fear, that these guys are going to get muzzled and that the uppity ups are going to
I have an uninformed opinion here, and because I have such respect for both of them as entertainers and analysts,
I don't think they'll allow
quit
it.
in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
These two guys, if they are in any way muzzled, I think will say, thank you very much, I'm done.
Well,
no
and you
way.
know what? ESPN hasn't muzzled Pat McAfee
Well, that's
for
a
better or
wonderful
for
point.
worse.
Yep.
So hopefully they'll understand that,
They're great.
that what makes this show great is the unfiltered nature of it.
I would also think, one last thing, I would think, people watch the game for the game, but there's an added little cherry on top when they're doing the commentating. So I would watch them commentating, even if I'm not that crazy about the teams that are playing. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
Like it's
the ratings.
If a show is good, a show is good. If you like the NBA as an entity, even if you don't love the game that's on, you might be flipping through the channels one night and be like, oh, I'm going to stop and watch Inside the NBA.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's their regular NBA studio show, like,
I'm horrified.
maybe not.
I think, oh no, this isn't going to be any fun.
No,
at
I think
all.
I'm going to have faith that ESPN isn't going to tinker with it.
All right, that's good.
Good to see you,
Because
Treny.
we're all
Thanks,
hoping
guys.
we're going to have a long
Thank
playoff
you.
season next year with the Boston Celtics back in shape. And no, probably not. Treny says, okay, I guess. Okay. All right. No Jason Tatum.
We're moving on.
Which is a disaster.
Nice to see you, Treny.
Okay, we've been speaking with Treny Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston, and of course our inside scooper on the Bill Belichick, Jordan Hudson romance. She's also a BPR contributor. After a quick break, we're going to open the lines for some coffee talk. With temperatures finally heating up, are you turning to iced coffee this week? Plus, the ever-changing science on caffeine. Is it good for you or is it going to kill you? It changes all the time. But we'll find out where you are, and of course we know where Jim is. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, state lawmakers are debating a bill that would use camera surveillance to make some traffic fines automatic. A commission on trade between Massachusetts and Ireland is meeting for the first time. And as Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern balanced running a country with being a new mom. Her reflections on leadership and motherhood and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Central Square Theater, presenting Mrs. Warren's Profession by George Bernard Shaw. The mysterious Mrs. Warren built a global empire. Her daughter is shocked to learn how. Now through June 22nd. CentralSquareTheater.org. And Benchmark Senior Living. Benchmark's Mind and Memory Care program is committed to instilling dignity and independence for residents by offering personalized care plans, working at every residence's pace. Locations and more at benchmarkseniorliving.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow and Friday. Stunning new research has found that people who drink up to 7 cups of coffee a day, which is sort of me, have a 13% higher chance of healthy aging, Marjorie.
There you go, Jim.
Bad news, though, for you tea drinkers. The researchers found it was not associated, tea that is, with healthy aging. So we're using this latest so-called by the way, it's even better for women, I should have said.
Yeah.
We're using this latest so-called groundbreaking research as a thinly veiled excuse to open the phone and text lines to ask you about your coffee habits. What does coffee mean to you? How much do you drink? How does it change with the weather? Are you one of those Bostonians who drinks iced coffee year-round, your frozen fingers gripping the plastic cup like your life depends on? Or do you have a particular coffee ritual you stick to? Folgers scoopable sludge, instant coffee packets. I'd rather die first. A perfectly steep pour over, whatever it is. Coffee and you, 877-301-8970 is the number.
Okay, we have to start with a little sound from Dunkin' Donuts to
Sure, go ahead.
get everybody in the mood.
Yeah.
Here's the question. Do you prefer your Dunkin' iced coffee with these gross TikTok trend drinks with hardly a drop of real coffee? Take a listen.
My coffee order is a medium iced coffee, 1 pump of butter pecan, 1 pump of blueberry, extra ice, and oat milk. I want extra cream, extra sugar.
That captures it perfectly. Huge, by the way. The number is 877-301-8970. You mock me all the time. Coffee is really important to me. You like coffee a lot too.
I do. It's my favorite legal addiction.
And we do this every year, and I always forget. Do you drink iced coffee or you don't?
No.
Neither do I.
No.
I have one a year, maybe.
Every once in a while. You know when I'll drink it? If I'm out for lunch in the summertime and it's really hot and I want a little jolt, then I will drink iced coffee. But I have to put I don't put sugar in regular coffee. For some reason, I have to put sugar in iced coffee or it tastes terrible. So I don't like to drink
I do one, as I say, a year, just to show that I'm part of the crowd. Some people drink it even in winter, which is fine because I drink hot coffee because I love holding the warmth in my hand, even on hot days. The single greatest, I would argue, coffee moment in film of any kind is Agent Cooper. Agent Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks.
That was great. That was on a long time ago, but it was really good. Didn't they just replay it? I think they just replayed.
My daughter and I just watched the whole, I don't know if they replayed it or not.
Yeah, David Lynch's classic series.
Well, he just died. So it's Twin Peaks. Here's Agent Dale Cooper with a little life advice that pertains to our discussion. Here he is.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Every day, once a day, give yourself a present. Don't plan it. Don't wait for it. Just let it happen. Could be a new shirt at the men's store, a cat nap in your office chair, or 2 cups of good, hot, black coffee.
A present. Like Christmas.
Oh, man. That hits the spot.
If you didn't see Twin Peaks, which is one of the greatest television shows ever made, these moments with Agent Cooper and coffee were among the greats. The number is 877-301-8970. I have told you my favorite thing to do in the world in really hot weather is to sit outside with a cup of coffee, just sit on a chair or a bench and watch people. And without coffee, it's not even real. It's not
how do you take your coffee, Jim?
Well, I'm going to admit something up front before you expose me. When I first moved here, I drank French vanilla, which is humiliating.
Oh, no.
It is really humiliating.
God.
I stopped that about 25 years ago. I drink dark coffee with a little taste of milk. I'm not a purist. I don't drink it black. I don't like it.
No,
black
I don't
that
drink.
much.
But the only time I drink it black if it's after a big meal, particularly an Italian meal.
Maybe that's right.
If I'm going to finish off the end of the day, especially when I used to smoke cigarettes, which was terrible, a black coffee and a cup of cigarettes after a huge pasta dinner always tasted good.
You know what the only thing better than a great cup of coffee is the smell of the grinding or brewing of a great cup of coffee. I'll tell one more story about this we've told before, and then we'll get to your calls at 877-301-8970. Starbucks under, what was Schultz's first name? I can't remember. The former head of Starbucks, when he was the head of it, they eliminated the grinding of coffee in the local stores.
That's right.
They centralized it to save money. Their business went down dramatically, and he had concluded that it was the smell when you entered Starbucks.
That's a big deal.
Of the coffee being ground. Ground is the right word? Ground, yes. That was attracting so many people. They went back to grinding in the stores. Their business went right back up.
You know, I do the composting thing now because it makes me feel less guilty about all the food I waste. So I accidentally got some French vanilla coffee, which I promptly threw out when I realized I got in the wrong kind of coffee. It smelled up that composting bin for like 2 weeks. It's
great.
Still in there even after I cleaned it out. Listen to this. Jim, unfortunately your consumption
This is Joel in Connecticut.
Joel in Connecticut. Your consumption of tube-based meat, that's the liverwurst, offsets the years gained by drinking coffee, which I think is a great point, Jim. And listen to this texter. This person, I don't go to Market Basket, it's too far for me, but they get Market Basket, how do you say that?
Arabica.
Arabica bean coffee. Grind beans per cup every morning. French press, the only way to go. Iced coffee in the summer, this person says. But I'm a French press person too, and I got to grind my own beans.
But there's a problem with French press. I would agree that it's the best tasting coffee, the first cup. What do you do for the second cup? You pour it and then put it in the microwave? How do you drink a hot second cup of coffee?
You know something? It tastes pretty good out of the microwave. I do the French press, and I get 4 cups in my coffee cup, and I will even save it, Jim, if I don't drink it all because I'm coming to work.
Okay, let's go to Andrew in New York City. We're talking coffee. What's so funny?
Here's an anonymous texter.
What?
He knows you well, or she knows you well. This is Jim. Nothing like sitting at a cafe on Rue Claire, watching the sunrise over the Eiffel Tower.
I happen to have done that probably a lot of times in my life, and I know that's mockery, but there is nothing like sitting on Rue Claire.
Everyone can agree.
If you've never been to Paris, the cafes, all the seats face the street.
Yeah.
It's like long rows of tables.
You can sit there forever.
Oh, it's great.
And you know what? There's always enough seats empty that you don't feel guilty about staying there forever.
Andrew in New York City.
Andrew in New York City. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie.
How are you?
Okay, so I'm great. I love a cup of pour over coffee. I do a pour over every morning.
That's good too.
And I drink it black. But what my hack is, I take now this is like you really got to be prepared for a little bit of a mess. But I take the coffee grinds into the shower with me, and I do a face scrub and a body scrub, and it gets rid of all the blackheads, and it makes your skin feel so soft, and it's free.
Wait a minute. Are you serious?
That's one of the best first calls in a segment
ever.
ever.
You really do that?
Yes, yeah.
And then
I made a total mess last week, but it's just it looks like murder in there afterwards. But.
Wait a minute. Now, they go down don't they clog the drain or whatever?
No. I mean, maybe, but that's what Drano's for. I don't know.
No. Okay.
Andrew, that is a beautiful image.
I'm all
thanks
for
for
beauty
sharing
products.
It with us.
Maybe I should try that. Blue Bottle, they do that.
Thank you.
They do that pour over thing.
It's really expensive.
Yeah,
it's really
very
good.
expensive,
really
and you're in there for a
expensive.
half an hour waiting for the coffee to drip over the.
It's pretty. It's all white. I think all the blue bottles are all white. So you go in there. There's one in Harvard Square. It's really pretty.
Yeah, they have one
really
in Chestnut Hill. Well, they have it.
Do you drink Dunkin' Donuts still or no?
No, but if I have to, I like their donuts. I like their butter crunch donuts, their plain donuts. If I have to, I get it with a turbo shot because I don't think there's enough caffeine in the Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
That's very sad.
And people say Starbucks tastes burnt. But there are a lot of great coffee places. We have great coffee places in Boston.
Like what?
Well, a lot of people like Cafe Nero. The coffee there is pretty
Flowers
good.
got good coffee.
Flowers got
Newsfeed Cafe has good coffee.
Newsfeed Cafe's got good coffee. I make good coffee in my kitchen every morning.
You
Sometimes
do.
I make it actually the night before.
Oh, that is an abomination.
So I don't have to wait. Now you can get with a
Wait, and you put it in the refrigerator and then
I don't even put it in the refrigerator.
Oh, you mean you get it ready to wait? It's not brewed the night before.
Brewed.
And it sits
Well,
there.
I have to tell you something. Women that have had children can relate to this. When I was pregnant, you're not supposed to be drinking coffee.
You're not?
So I got into the bad habit of putting like an inch of coffee in my cup and like 3 inches of milk. So I put a lot of milk in my coffee now. So, I'm not a purist on the coffee front, but so that's why I do it, because the taste does not change. Edward from Milton, thank you for calling.
Hello, Edward.
Hello, Jim. Hello, Marjorie.
Hi.
Hi.
So I had an experience just a week or so ago where I spilled coffee in the car. And I couldn't help but make the observation that why is it that you can smell coffee beans and they smell so good? And then you grind them and they smell even better. And then you brew it and the smell is just intoxicating. You're sipping the coffee and it smells so good. Yet you spill it in your car and within 5 minutes, it's the worst smell you could possibly imagine.
Wow.
Well, I
did
think
know
I
that.
can answer that. Did you have milk in it?
I do not have milk in it.
Oh, well, then I
what
can't
happened
explain
is
it. Go ahead.
I did like something got caught in my throat, and I did like a spit take. So it ended up on the inside of the windshield, all over my steering wheel. And at the end of a 10-minute drive, I wanted to just walk. I couldn't even get back in the car because of the smell of just black coffee spilled all over upholstery and leather.
There is one of the funniest skits ever, and I can't think of the comedian's name. One of our colleagues will look it up. There was a bit on Saturday Night Live about 20 years ago where someone, a famous comedian, was doing a class for young comedians on the spit take. And I assume people know what a spit take is. Remember Danny Thomas on the show?
Yes.
He'd take a sip of coffee, and then his daughter would say, I'm marrying the kid next door, and he'd spit his coffee out. No matter what she said, he spit his coffee. That's what a spit take is. We'll figure out who was in a minute. Edward, that was an excellent call. Speaking of excellent, here, listen to this text. This is like poetry. This is Elle in West Roxbury. I'm not crazy about the last sentence. The first two are great. I love coffee so much. The smell, the ritual, the first sip. Here's the line I love. Sometimes I go to bed at night excited for my coffee the next morning. That always happens to me. This is the part where she loses me or he loses me. I recently tried extra creamy Chobani oat milk, and it's better than milk, and I'm not some crunchy vegan or anything. I've done it. It doesn't do anything for me. But do you ever go to bed the night before when you're really tired, thinking about the smell and the taste the next morning?
I make the coffee the night before, so when I get up in the morning, it's going to be all ready for me to go.
Why don't you use a timer? Every kind of coffee maker has a timer.
Because I don't have one with a timer. I have the French press.
And it just sits at room temperature in your kitchen all night.
That's correct, Jim.
And do you realize that the taste changes?
I don't think the taste changes.
Yes, it does.
But I put so much milk in it, I can't tell. Someone says we should listen to a song by Bellevue Cadillac called Cup of Joe. Do you know that song?
Jamie's getting it as we speak.
Jamie's getting it as we speak.
I don't think he is, but might. You never know. Nick in Hartford, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about coffee, one of Marjorie and my favorite things. Hi.
Hey there. So, some functional answers to things that have come up.
Please.
Number one, the French press thing. My wife does this every morning. Makes a full French press, puts the remainder, what's left after you've poured that first cup, into a thermos.
Oh, yeah.
Has it on hand every morning, keeps it hot. She knows what she's doing.
You're right.
Marjorie, do not make it the night before. That's terrible. That's sacrilegious.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've disappointed you, Nick.
You're doing well. Keep going.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Number two, if you don't want to clog your drains, put coffee grounds in the hydrangea bushes. Really good.
Oh, yes. A lot of people say that the hydrangea, yes, absolutely. I did try that. I don't know if it made a difference, but I did do it.
Works like a charm. And the main reason I called, I don't know how poetic I can wax here. When I was a barista, I became a barista in Boston and worked for a local cafe simultaneously with a local cider making company. Both of those blew the doors off and made me appreciate sense of ritual, terroir, anything that you can bring to these delightful offerings. Somehow we stupid humans have made these beautiful gastronomic delights. Coffee is perfect as a ritual, and it is the perfect thing you can share even with sober friends, which I would like to emphasize. And go to your local cafe or roaster and do it up as small and close to home as possible. Marjorie in Brookline, Clear Flower has a great cafe. They know what they're doing.
They do? I didn't even know that. I know Clear Flower Bakery.
Nick, you're doing great.
Oh, I walk out of my way whenever I'm back in town in Coolidge Corner just to go to them.
All right.
They know what they're doing. They're so polite. But yeah, treat it with respect, the ritual of it. You know, you don't have to be a total snob, but just treat it with respect and time, and you'll be doing yourself a great bit of self-care.
Okay, let me ask you something, because that was beautiful. I feel like a new woman having listened to you, Nick. But there's a place in Washington Square, a coffee place in Washington Square. Of course, I can't remember the name of it. But if you go there to order an espresso, they will not let you get takeout espresso. They insist that you drink it in the store. What do you think about that?
Oh, we lost him.
Oh, we lost him. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's a purist kind of thing.
They're saying this is ridiculous. An espresso is 2 sips. Why do you have to put it in a cup? Just drink it here in the store.
If I mention Paris again, you're going to ridicule me?
On the Rue Claire.
About 20 plus years ago, and I'm sure I visited Rue Claire then, I ordered, maybe it was 25 years ago, I ordered a cup of coffee to go. Do you know what? They didn't have, nor did any cafe. There was no coffee to go anywhere.
That's what I mean. I think it's a different. It's a culture of sitting down and drinking your coffee. And I think this coffee place in Washington Square was trying to repeat that. But one day I was really in a hurry and I was really tired and I wanted my espresso and they wouldn't give it to me. So I was upset.
I have a couple of texts I want to read. Anonymous texter nailed it. The reason Marjorie doesn't have a coffee cup with a coffee machine with a timer, she lost the charger. That is totally true. Thank you. Here's Chris in Fall River. Here I am trying to enjoy my coffee. I'm hearing calls about people spitting coffee and taking showers with coffee grounds. That's a good point. And Robin Lowell, this is a good one. I wake up around 5 a.m. every day. I think it's because I'm so excited and anticipating the first cup of coffee. I'm exactly that person.
Do you have a timer? Do you have a Mr. Coffee?
No, I have a real ritual. I like doing the making thing in the morning. I don't even, talk about anal. A lot of people clean out the filter the night before so you're ready to go. I like cleaning out the filter and starting from scratch in the morning. I do that. I clean out the pot. I then fill up the vessel thing on the side and make it fresh. And
what do you do? Do you do French roast or what do you do? Do you do French press? What do you do?
I do a drip kind of
drip
thing
coffee,
because it keeps it warm. Even though the guy who called a minute ago was right, you can transfer it to a thermos.
A drip like a Mr. Coffee drip?
Well, it's not Mr. Coffee. It's a little better than that.
Oh, yeah? What kind of coffee maker do you have?
I'm not sure, Marjorie. It's not Breville, if that's your question, for $500.
Those are very good, right? The Breville coffee makers. I have an espresso machine.
You do?
Yes. Someone gave it to my daughter as a wedding gift, but she had no room for it. So
let's guess. Let me just guess, if I may. I know you fairly well. Marjorie has an espresso machine. Let me think. How many times has she used it? I would say none.
I've used it a lot.
You have?
Yes. Look, Jim, you're
then
so
observant.
What do I get a cup of every day here?
I know you do, but you didn't make it. It's got to have little capsules pre-made because you would never do it yourself.
It has little capsules
which
you can recycle.
Cheating. That's like Nespresso. Is that what it is?
Nespresso.
Nespresso.
Yeah, you can recycle them. And they claim they actually recycle them. I was suspicious.
Okay.
That's what I thought, but I accosted the guy at the Bloomingdale's.
You know what is as much fun as anything? And they're not that expensive. You buy a real espresso machine and you do the thing where you put the grounds in and you turn the thing, just like they do over at the baristas. It is really fun. And it's really satisfying. It does nothing for you, right? Thank you. Lily in no, it's clear she doesn't give a damn. Lily in Rhode Island, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lily.
Be honest. Come on. Hi, Lily.
Hi.
I'm gonna make this quick. I just love coffee and I love listening to the guys. I've never called before, but
oh my God.
So you're fantastic.
Wow.
So one of my rituals is to have my coffee in the morning. And then on my way to work or whatever, I listen to you guys.
Oh, my God.
Oh, thank you.
Lily, you made our day.
Like the guy, I don't take a shower with my coffee grounds, but I do use my coffee grounds to clean my pot.
Well, because it serves as like an abrasive kind of thing?
Yeah, it's especially like if you've got a little something greasy in your pan, you just pour the coffee grounds in there and let it sit for a while, and the acid just
I have no idea. Hey, that was a really kind and useful call. Lily, thanks for saying all those things and thanks for the advice. That was pretty good. You ever use coffee grounds to clean
No,
anything?
have you?
I'm going to try it. That's a great idea.
And they also go in rhododendrons. The gentleman
Why?
mentioned hydrangeas, but they're also supposed to be good with rhododendrons too. I don't know.
Huh.
Yeah.
Why aren't you planting a lot of flowers outside your house?
I'm not. I'm a little behind this year. A little behind, but I'm working on it.
Okay, good.
Elizabeth in Concord, thank you very much.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm a third-time caller, long-time listener. I love you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Strangely, I was agreeing with Jim on so many things right here. I love sitting on, at a salon de thé in Paris. It wasn't Rue Claire, but there's nothing like that. And you're people watching, you're view watching. But anyway, also instead of iced coffee, I like a hot cup of coffee when it's 80 degrees outside.
Me too.
I know it's weird. Sitting outside because it gives you, anyway, the other thing about it is people go, oh, well, then go live in Europe. No, I want it to come here. Sitting and being able to enjoy and savoring and conversation because we're all so fast and everything's so quick.
Yeah.
What I like about coffee, and I'm a tea drinker too. I brew a full pot of tea in the morning, but I also am a I was going to say omnivore, but I just learned a new word.
We're losing
Elizabeth,
you.
we're losing.
Elizabeth.
The connection is horrible, but what you did get to say was great, and thanks. That was the spirit. That was the perfect spirit that she expressed about the joy of sitting, drinking coffee, hot coffee, and watching people walk by.
Listen to this one.
What's that?
The ultimate coffee plan from my family, a full coffee maker on the bedside table. Set up the water at bedtime and you're good to press on and bed in the morning without ever having to get out.
You ever hear that in your whole
bed.
life?
No, but it's not a bad idea. And Rick from Key Largo points out, they talk about this big study of women, and this study was presented at the American Society of Nutrition about women and drinking. And this Rick from Key Largo, the nurses, the long study of nurses that has been, and it's been going on for decades. I think that was another thing that Trump canceled. Rick from Lee Largo says that too. He's director of a DNA repair lab at a local medical school. And he says this study is part of a long-term study that is the most complete longitudinal health study ever. Secretary Brainworm, that would be RFK Jr., canceled it this spring. Call your congresspeople and holler. Caffeine is known to inhibit protein kinases, if that's pronounced correctly, with paradoxical implications. Inhibition of DNA-dependent protein kinases blocks the DNA damage response pathway, which makes cells more sensitive to DNA damage. So
I have no idea what they're talking about.
There's reasons that coffee is good for you, and there's reasons that it's good to study, keep these studies going on for decades. And there's been a long time nurses study. There was a long time estrogen study that went on for decades, a newer estrogen study that went on after that. This is how you find things out. You look at how people who start something in their 20s, how they're doing when they get to 50, 60, and 70. But
you just call RFK.
Or you call RFK.
One last text. You ready?
Yes.
Anonymous texter, you can put coffee grounds anywhere in your garden. They're great for almost anything. Never throw them in the trash. Put them in the garden or your sidewalk, Marjorie.
That's right.
Where the dogs pee.
That's right.
So there you have it.
Yeah, the dogs are really out of control. No one is listening to me.
Okay, fine.
I've got to get a big fence.
Can we?
That's the only answer.
Can we?
Right in front of me. They don't care. I said, those are my plants.
Okay, good.
Well, it's going to rain soon.
Okay, great.
That's the latest answer. Don't worry, it's going to rain soon.
Okay.
Right in front of me.
Goodbye.
Okay, we done?
I want to talk to Jared for a second.
Oh, Jared's here. Hi,
Hey,
Jared.
Jared. This is not the most fun of topics, but we discussed earlier with Lee Pelton layoffs at GBH announced yesterday, and unfortunately, two of your coworkers, both of whom are wonderful, were among the layoffs. How are you? How is everybody? How are you guys?
It's tough, to be honest with you. I think one of the great joys of a job you love is doing the work you love and then having people that you are great friends with at work and outside of work, and you all come together and you do great things. And so it really hurts when you lose those people.
Can we say who they are?
Of course we can.
Can we say who they are?
Brian Bell, James Bennett
Brian Bell,
II,
an
two
incredibly
wonderful people.
talented guy, and James Bennett that we've had on the radio.
We worked with Brian at the old radio station many years ago.
That's right, and he came, and he's such a talented guy. And James Bennett, we've had him on with us several times. Knows everything about music, and we were just talking about his breadth of knowledge last week. And I'm devastated that they're both gone. It's just very sad.
I have nothing to add to that other than to say, yeah, it's a very sad day for us. We are a family. I feel like at the Culture Show, it sounds like a cliche to say that, but we really are. We text, we Slack through the night, through the weekends. We have a lot of fun together. I adore everyone. We have such a blast. So these times are pretty excruciating, to be honest.
Well, we're sorry for you, your coworkers, and of course, mostly for them. But the show is going on. What are you doing today there, Jared Bowen?
So we're talking about the new book, The Battle for Boston, by Don Gillis, who is a grassroots organizer who caught the interest of then Mayor Ray Flynn, or as he was ascending.
Yep.
And so he has written this new book. So joining us is Don Gillis and Mayor Ray Flynn.
Oh, great.
On the show today.
I haven't seen Mayor Flynn in a long time. Great admirer. That's great. I'm really glad he's there.
And so, yeah, we'll talk about what he's done and how that DNA has extended forward to the current administration. We'll speak with Lane Moore. I don't know if you know about her, comedian who does a show called Tinder Live, where she basically pops up a Tinder screen and you swipe left or right as you're on stage, as she's on stage. Sometimes they even get to engage with people alive. So we'll talk about that whole culture.
That's hysterical.
And then the Cape Ann Museum, while it's undergoing renovations, is doing a number of walking tours right now. So we'll talk with them about that.
We're thinking of you and all your coworkers. Jared, thanks for joining us, and good luck today.
A shout out to James Bennett II and Brian Bell.
Indeed.
And,
two really good souls.
We're very, very
two
sad
really talented
that
souls.
we've lost them.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thanks to everybody who came down here to see the show. Keep up with us 24/7 way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to be back here at the library with Harvard National Security expert Juliette Kayyem, GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen, whom we just talked with. We'll also host a panel with two local people providing aid directly to Ukraine, and a restaurant panel with two Palestinian shops, Yaffa Bakery in Somerville and Andela Coffee in Cambridge. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, our executive producer, Jamie Bologna. Special thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Brandon Cardley, Juan Jose Cadena, our host at the Newsfeed Cafe, and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Jared and the Culture Show starts immediately after us here on 89.7 GBH. I'm Marjorie Egan.
I just want to say again, third day, first hour on NEPM in Western Mass. Please tell your friends, 88.5 FM from 11 to noon. I'm Jim Browdy, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.
Bye.
WGBH-FM HD2 Boston, WCAI-FM HD2 Woods Hole, WJMF-FM Smithfield Providence, and at classical.org.
Just about 2 o'clock on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Greg Furriesi here with you. Coming up today, I've got a Mozart piano concerto for you featuring Mitsuko Uchida, Brahms' Haydn Variations After 4, and here now.